Chapter 274. What kind of attack is this? Long Xiao looked at the long mark on the ground in shock. In that instant, the power that Qin Haoshuan had unleashed was not inferior to Lan Shuxin's water explosion. It was even more terrifying. LVZ's expression was extremely grave as she looked at Qin Haoshuan, who was standing on the stage in a relaxed manner. She said in a deep voice, "It would be very difficult for any of us to dodge such an attack." Han Ting had already been defeated, and only the three of them were left. However, even Bai Yu might not be able to block such a terrifying attack that could be unleashed in an instant. It would be difficult for them to even touch the corner of Qin Haoshuan's clothes, let alone defeat him. He can't do it consecutively. Bai Yu looked deeply at Qin Haoshuan and said to Lu Zi, "He can only unleash such an attack once in a short period of time." Lu Zi was surprised when she heard Bai Yu's words. She asked, "Are you sure?" Bai Yu nodded and said to Lu Zi, "We have to end this quickly. We can't give him the chance to recover." "I'll do it." Long Xiao lifted her foot and walked towards the arena. She wanted to see what other abilities Qin Haoshuan had without the charging wind cannon. At this moment, the host had already returned to the stage. She looked at Qin Haoshuan with excitement and then looked at the audience. She said loudly, "It was an extremely exciting and shocking match. I announce that Qin Haoshuan is the winner of the second match between the First Academy and the Black Moon Combat Academy." Roar. The moment the host's voice fell, the audience burst into earth-shattering cheers. Qin Haoshuan, whom they trusted, did not disappoint them. He defeated his opponent in an absolutely crushing manner. At this moment, the loud cheers once again resounded throughout the entire stadium. Just as the host wanted to say something, Long Xiao had already walked onto the stage. She glanced at the excited host who wanted to praise Qin Haoshuan and said coldly, "All right, shut up. Let's announce the start of the next match." The host was stunned when she heard Long Xiao's words. This was the first time she had seen a contestant who was so impatient to start the next match. Qin Haoshuan narrowed his eyes when he saw Long Xiao's impatience. He said indifferently, "Since Miss Long Xiao is so impatient, let's move on to the next match." Long Xiao snorted coldly and said disdainfully, "Pretentious." When the host heard Qin Haoshuan's words, she did not say anything else. She announced the audience was still shouting excitedly, "Next, the First Academy will be pitted against the Black Moon Combat Academy. The third match, Qin Haoshuan will be pitted against Long Xiao." When the host of the audience of the next match of the first, the commentator immediately began to give a detailed analysis of the current of the match of the First Academy. Qin Haoshuan easily defeated Han Ting with an unrivaled momentum. He is currently in the limelight. The Black Moon Combat Academy's decision to immediately move on to the next match is the most appropriate choice. If Qin Haoshuan continues to gather momentum, the situation will become more and more disadvantageous for the Black Moon Combat Academy. Perhaps some people do not know much about Long Xiao. However, I believe that everyone knows about the Long family, which is the #1 symbol array master in the Federation. Long Xiao is the daughter of the current head of the Long family, Senior Long Wu. She is also the daughter of the Long family's first wife. She is extremely talented in the symbol array Dao and is definitely not weak. If she fights against Qin Haoshuan might not be as relaxed as before. That's right. I am also looking forward to seeing how the Long family's first wife's daughter will perform in this match. The audience's understanding of Long Xiao was indeed limited. The majority of the audience only knew of her existence through the Star Dragon list. As for Long Xiao's strength, not many people knew about it. However, the audience was very familiar with the #1 symbol array master in the Federation. Since Long Xiao was from the Long family and she was also the first wife's daughter, her strength should not be too weak. At the very least, she should be able to compete with Qin Haoshuan. However, the majority of the audience was not optimistic about Long Xiao. They still felt that Qin Haoshuan would be the final victor. Beep beep beep. The familiar whistle sounded and the match officially began. Just when the audience was wondering if Qin Haoshuan would be able to instantly defeat Long Shao with a single move, Qin Haoshuan staggered and took 2 steps back. When the audience saw this scene, they could not help but feel surprised. What was going on? Just when the audience was surprised, commentator Zhe Shi immediately explained Qin Haoshuan's performance to the audience. If I'm not wrong, Long Shao should be wary that Qin Haoshuan would use the charge wind cannon to instantly kill her. Therefore, she made the first move and directly attacked Qin Haoshuan's brain with her mental energy. This is an extremely dangerous move. Long Shao is a symbol array master. Naturally, her mental energy is stronger than ordinary people. Since she took the risk to attack Qin Haoshuan's brain with her mental energy, it is obvious that she is confident that she can defeat Qin Haoshuan in terms of mental energy. That's right. At this moment, the arena is completely silent to our naked eyes. It is as if nothing has happened. However, in fact, the battle between Qin Haoshuan and Long Shao is on the mental energy level. It is more dangerous than a normal battle. The slightest carelessness may lead to eternal damnation. After hearing the commentator's explanation, the audience who did not know what was going on could not help but feel worried. This kind of battle that involved the mental energy level was extremely dangerous. Even the referee would find it difficult to immediately react and take targeted rescue measures. It could be said that it was extremely dangerous. She is too reckless. Qin Chuan looked at Long Shao, who was frowning in the arena. With a serious expression, he said to Zhou Lin, "This time, she may suffer a great loss." After hearing Qin Chuan's words, Zhou Lin was a little puzzled. As a symbol array master, Long Zhao's mental energy is definitely stronger than Qin Haoshuan's. Why do you think that Long Shao will suffer a loss? Dragon soul. Qin Chuan said in a deep voice, Qin Haoshuan has a dragon soul. Zhou Lin's expression could not help but change slightly when she heard this. If Qin Haoshuan had a dragon soul to protect his body, with Long Zhao's mental energy, it was impossible for her to seriously injure Qin Haoshuan. If she was not careful, she might even suffer a backlash. At this moment, a new change finally occurred in the arena. Long Zhao's face suddenly turned pale. Black blood flowed from her nose and the corner of her mouth. Her body was also on the verge of collapse. In the next moment, an earth-shattering dragon roar sounded from Qin Haoshuan's body. Soon after, Long Shao let out a miserable cry and fainted on the arena. After Long Shao fainted, Qin Haoshuan slowly opened his eyes. He looked at Long Shao, who had fainted on the ground, and sneered. If it was in the past, perhaps he would be afraid of Long Zhao's mental energy attack. However, now that he had a dragon soul, his mental energy was infinitely strengthened. It was merely a fool's dream for Long Shao to think that she could win with her mental energy. Chapter 275. Commentator Zhe Shi could not help but cry out when he saw the scene on the stage. Dragon Soul Protection. It's actually the Dragon Soul Protection. Rumor has it that on the day of Qin Haoshuan's foundation establishment banquet, the Qin family's ancestor, Qin Chongshao, personally gave Qin Haoshuan a dragon soul as a congratulatory gift. I never thought that this dragon soul would appear at this moment and help Qin Haoshuan defeat Long Shao. What a pity! If not for the dragon soul protection, perhaps Long Shao would have had a chance to win. What a pity! What a pity! A dragon soul is rarely seen in 1,000 years. For Qin Haoshuan to be able to obtain it, it can be said that he has received the favor of the heavens. Long Shao neglected this point and tried to defeat Qin Haoshuan with her spiritual energy. She really chose the wrong method. If Long Shao had used a talisman array to fight against Qin Haoshuan, perhaps she could have won. However, she had neglected the dragon soul and chose to use her spiritual energy to attack Qin Haoshuan's brain. It was the same as trying to get a fish out of a tree. It was normal for her to suffer such a crushing defeat. The moment Long Shao fell, the audience that supported Qin Haoshuan cheered once again. At this moment, Qin Haoshuan was like a god of war in their eyes, standing tall and unyielding. Qin Haoshuan will definitely win this battle. Hearing this resounding slogan, even Yi Qingning, who had always disliked Qin Haoshuan, had to admit that Qin Haoshuan did have some ability. He was really strong. Now, the opponent's captain and the Long family's first daughter have both been defeated. The remaining two are not well known and should not be powerful characters. We will definitely win this battle. Seeing Qin Haoshuan's 2 consecutive crushing performances, Yuman could not help but smile. Compared to the reckless Jiang Wudi, Qin Haoshuan's performance could be said to be impeccable. However, Drizzt did not agree with Yuman's words. He looked at Bai Yu's figure with a subtle expression and said to Yuman, "Captain has already defeated 2 opponents, but that white-haired girl from the Black Moon Combat Academy is still expressionless. It's as if nothing has happened. Do you think she is stunned by the captain's performance, or is she confident that she can defeat him?" Hearing Drizzt's words, Yuman could not help but look at Bai Yu. After seriously sizing her up, Yuman could not help but ask with some doubts, "Who is she?" Bai Yu, a freshman at the Black Moon Combat Academy. Yi Qingning, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. She looked at Bai Yu's figure and lightly said, "As far as I know, Bai Yu is the #1 new student of the Black Moon Combat Academy." The #1 freshman? Yuman and Drizzt were rather surprised to hear this. Shouldn't Qin Chuan be the #1 amongst the new students? Seeing the changes in Yuman and Drizzt's expressions, Yi Qingning knew what the 2 of them were thinking. She smiled and said, "At first, I also thought that Qin Chuan was the #1 freshman of the Black Moon Combat Academy. However, after some investigation, I discovered that this Bai Yu might be even stronger than Qin Chuan." Yuman and Drizzt looked at each other and saw a trace of graveness in each other's eyes. Their memories of Qin Chuan's performance in the newcomer competition were still fresh in their minds. If Bai Yu was stronger than Qin Chuan, wouldn't that mean that Qin Haoshuan would be in danger? However, let's not say anything yet. We'll only know who's stronger after watching the 2 of them fight. Yi Qingning looked at Qin Haoshuan with a playful expression and said, "I actually hope that Qin Haoshuan will suffer a loss and lose his spirit." Below the stage, Lu Zi looked at Bai Yu with a solemn expression and said, "Let me fight the next battle." Bai Yu nodded and said, "Be careful." Lu Zi nodded lightly and walked towards the stage. She stood in front of Qin Haoshuan with an expressionless face, but her eyes were filled with fighting spirit as she looked at Qin Haoshuan. Facing Lu Zi's eyes that were filled with fighting spirit, Qin Haoshuan gently smiled and said, "You're an interesting person. You actually have such a high fighting spirit. Do you really think that you can defeat me?" "Everything depends on effort." Lu Zi pursed her lips. Of course, she knew that it would be difficult for her to defeat Qin Haoshuan. However, she still had to try her best. What if she succeeded? Then you'll have to work harder. I've heard that you have a good relationship with Qin Chuan. I won't be lenient with you. Qin Haoshuan suddenly turned to look in the direction of the audience. His gaze accurately locked onto Qin Chuan, who was sitting in the front row. He gave Qin Chuan a faint smile, and a trace of coldness appeared in his eyes. In the audience, Qin Chuan felt that something was wrong when he sensed Qin Haoshuan's hostility towards him. He was worried that Qin Haoshuan would do something excessive to Lu Zi. He wanted to make Lu Zi admit defeat, but at this moment, the referee's whistle rang out. The 4th match between Stardragon's First Academy and the Black Moon Combat Academy was about to begin. At the beginning of the match, Lu Zi's figure suddenly split into 10 and scattered in all directions. Based on her appearance and voice, it was impossible to tell which was the real body. This student LVZ is actually a rare illusion array master. It's really surprising. Right now, she should be using the shadow body glyph array. This is a glyph array that illusion array masters commonly use to protect themselves and confuse the enemy. It's also one of the few instant cast glyph arrays. An illusion array master's combat strength is on the weaker side. Although Lu Zi will affect Qin Haoshuan to a certain extent, the effect should be limited. The audience was very surprised when they heard the commentator's words. They had seen many array masters before, but this was the first time they had seen an illusion array master. They wondered what kind of strength this rare illusion array master would be able to display against Qin Haoshuan. At this moment, Qin Haoshuan remained motionless on the stage. He allowed Lu Zi's figures to scatter in all directions. He looked at Lu Zi's movements with interest, as if he wasn't in a hurry to make a move. On the other side, Lu Zi's mood wasn't as relaxed as Qin Haoshuan's. This was because Qin Haoshuan's gaze had been locked onto her body from beginning to end. It was as if he hadn't been affected by her doppelgangers at all. This made her feel surprised, but at the same time, she didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. She was worried that Qin Haoshuan would take advantage of her weakness and defeat her in one move. Lu Zi tried to constantly change the location of her body, but Qin Haoshuan was able to accurately lock onto her every time. This made Lu Zi realize that the shadow body glyph array was useless against Qin Haoshuan. Flying Cloud Glyph Array, activate! Lu Zi shouted in a low voice and suddenly activated the Flying Cloud Glyph Array. She wanted to use the Flying Cloud Glyph Array to obscure Qin Haoshuan's vision. However, at this moment Qin Haoshuan, who had been as steady as Mount Tai, moved. Without any sound, Qin Haoshuan's figure appeared behind Lu Zi like a ghost. His palm lightly landed on Lu Zi's shoulder, but it made Lu Zi feel as if she was being crushed by Mount Tai. Her shoulder instantly caved in and blood splashed out. Chapter 276. The moment her shoulder was heavily injured, Lu Zi endured the pain and tried to pull away from Qin Haoshuan. However, Qin Haoshuan did not give Lu Zi the chance to do so. His left hand firmly grabbed onto Lu Zi's left shoulder and a majestic spiritual force gushed out from his palm, instantly crushing Lu Zi's left shoulder. Looking at Lu Zi's mangled shoulders, Qin Haoshuan smiled and said, "Now, can you still continue to inscribe the symbol arrays?" Lu Zi, who was being controlled by Qin Haoshuan, was as pale as a sheet of paper. Large beads of sweat rolled down her forehead, and she gritted her teeth to prevent herself from crying out in pain. When Qin Haoshuan saw that Lu Zi was holding on and was unwilling to scream, he couldn't help but sneer again. "I want to see how hard your bones are." Qin Haoshuan exerted force in his hand and controlled Lu Zi's body. Then, he suddenly raised his right leg and ruthlessly kicked the back of Lu Zi's leg. Along with the sound of bones shattering, Lu Zi's right leg was immediately broken. The white bone pierced through the red flesh and blood, making for an extremely hideous scene. This time, LVZ was finally unable to hold back and cried out in an incomparably miserable manner. When he saw that Lu Zi had finally let out a miserable scream, Qin Haoshuan couldn't help but reveal a satisfied expression. He liked this feeling. In the spectator stands, everyone was shocked when they saw Qin Haoshuan's cruel actions towards Lu Zi. Qin Haoshuan clearly could have won easily, so why did he have to torture Lu Zi like this? Even those who had always supported Qin Haoshuan and worshipped him were frightened by Qin Haoshuan's atrocious behavior. Admit defeat. Just when the entire stadium was silent, an extremely cold voice rang out in everyone's ears. At some point, Qin Chuan's figure had arrived below the stage and stood beside Bai Yu. He gloomily looked at the referee who was standing not far away and said, "Our Black Moon Combat Academy admits defeat." When the referee heard Qin Chuan's words, he was about to stop the match. However, Qin Haoshuan suddenly sneered and said, "According to the rules of the competition, only the contestant or the team leader of the representative team admits defeat will count. You are a member of the newcomer competition and an ordinary team member. Admitting defeat is invalid." As he spoke, Qin Haoshuan had already raised his leg and aimed at Lu Zi's other leg. When he saw this scene, Qin Chuan's pupils couldn't help but shrink. He exclaimed, "Bastard, stop!" In the arena, she knew that if she continued to persist, she would be humiliated even worse. She was simply no match for Qin Haoshuan. But when she was to admit defeat, Qin Haoshuan ruthlessly broke her left leg. Instantly, she was about to admit defeat. Instantly, the words "admit defeat twos, admit defeat," turned to "admit defeat to admit defeat, bastard." Qin Chuan could no longer hold back the anger in his heart. He suddenly rushed into the arena. Toot toot toot. At the same time, the referee's whistle rang out. His figure appeared in the arena and blocked the furious Qin Chuan. Black Moon Combat Academy's contestant Lu Zi has fainted. Automatically disqualified. The winner of this match is Star Dragon's First Academy's Qin Haoshuan. As he spoke, the referee looked at Qin Haoshuan with an extremely strict gaze. If Qin Haoshuan dared to make a move on Lu Zi again, then he would not be polite. Facing the referee's warning gaze, Qin Haoshuan tactfully did not continue to make a move on Lu Zi. He slowly let go of Lu Zi's body and let it lie on the ground. He then slowly took 2 steps back, indicating that he agreed with the referee's decision and that he would not make another move. On the other side, the medical personnel who had been waiting for a long time quickly carried Lu Zi away and gave her emergency treatment. Qin Chuan, this is an official competition, not a freshman competition. Please abide by the rules and remain calm. The referee turned his head and looked at Qin Chuan with a similarly strict gaze. Sorry, I have a few words to say. I'll leave after I finish. Qin Chuan's gaze was firmly fixed on the smiling Qin Haoshuan. He gently pushed the referee away and slowly walked in front of Qin Haoshuan, stopping in his track. Qin Haoshuan looked at Qin Chuan, who was standing in front of him. He faintly smiled and said, "Originally, this kind of torture should have been inflicted on you. Unfortunately, you didn't participate in the competition, so I could only make a move on Lu Zi. I heard that the two of you have a pretty good relationship. I think that you should be heartbroken, right? You're treating Lu Zi like this today because I rejected your invitation?" At this moment, Qin Chuan had already calmed down. He wanted to know the reason behind Qin Haoshuan's actions. When you rejected my invitation that day, you and your companions were doomed. The corner of Qin Haoshuan's mouth curled up as he coldly smiled. If you don't accept this, you can lead the Black Moon Combat Academy out of the revival round. I'll be waiting for you in the finals. Due to the loudspeakers on the stage, the entire audience, including those who were sitting in front of their crystal screens, could clearly hear the conversation between Qin Chuan and Qin Haoshuan. Originally, they had been confused and angry at Qin Haoshuan's violent behavior towards Lu Zi. However, after hearing Qin Haoshuan's explanation, everyone understood that Qin Haoshuan had done this because of Qin Chuan. Everyone involuntarily thought of the incident that had occurred during the freshman competition. Not only had Qin Chuan rejected Qin Haoshuan's invitation, but he had also spoken rudely and insulted Qin Haoshuan. Qin Chuan probably did not expect that this incident would suddenly erupt and implicate the people around him. At this moment, the audience could somewhat understand Qin Haoshuan's actions. After all, Qin Chuan had insulted Qin Haoshuan and the Qin family. If Qin Haoshuan did not respond, then how could the Qin family establish themselves in the Federation in the future? Rather than saying that Qin Haoshuan was violent towards Lu Zi, it was more accurate to say that Qin Haoshuan was purposely forcing Qin Chuan to appear. He wanted Qin Chuan to participate in the revival round so that he could have a fair fight with Qin Chuan. However, how could Qin Haoshuan be sure that Qin Chuan could lead the Black Moon Combat Academy out of the revival round? After thinking about it, if Qin Chuan could not lead the Black Moon Combat Academy out of the revival round and stand in front of Qin Haoshuan again, then he would not have the qualifications to talk about revenge. Qin Haoshuan naturally would not make things difficult for someone who did not even have the qualifications to stand in front of him. Qin Chuan did not immediately respond to Qin Haoshuan. Instead, he slowly turned to look at the referee and asked, "How can I kill someone during the competition?" After hearing Qin Chuan's question, the originally noisy arena suddenly quieted down. What was this guy trying to do? Both parties are willing to sign a life and death agreement. Then, they can fight to the death in the arena. There is no need to bear any responsibility. The referee looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "Young man, you should think twice before you act." Qin Chuan acted as if he did not hear the referee's words. He turned to face Qin Haoshuan again and said resolutely, "Your life is mine. If I want to kill you, no one can stop me. Not even your Qin family's ancestor." Chapter 277. Your life is mine now. When they heard Qin Chuan say this to Qin Haoshuan, everyone was shocked by Qin Chuan's decisiveness. When they heard Qin Chuan say, "Even the Qin family's ancestor can't do it," everyone looked at Qin Chuan as if they were looking at a madman. If he wasn't crazy, how could Qin Chuan say such shocking words? What kind of person was the Qin family's ancestor? He was a nascent soul cultivator who stood at the top of the Federation. What right did a puny early-stage foundation establishment have to look down on such a powerful person? If Qin Chuan spoke rudely to the Qin family's ancestor, the consequences would be much more severe than if Qin Haoshuan spoke rudely. Sure enough, when he heard Qin Chuan mention the Qin family's ancestor, Qin Haoshuan's face instantly darkened. He stared coldly at Qin Chuan and said in a deep voice, "Do you know what happens to people who speak rudely to the Qin family's ancestor in the Federation? Then I'd like to see what happens." Qin Chuan sneered. "Without the Qin family and the ancestor behind you, who do you think you are?" Qin Chuan had already thrown caution to the wind. He had never been bullied like this in his life. Originally, he only wanted to complete the mission given to him by Tsang Hao, which was why he went against Qin Haoshuan. He wanted to take back the dragon soul, but he didn't want to kill Qin Haoshuan. Now, he changed his mind. Qin Haoshuan must die. Very well. Qin Haoshuan stared coldly at Qin Chuan and said, "If you can make it to the finals, I will kill you with my own hands." The Qin family's ancestor was humiliated because of him. Even though he was the Qin family's descendant, he would still be criticized and even be punished by the family. Therefore, he had to kill Qin Chuan to appease the family's internal voices. At this point, Qin Chuan had no interest in talking nonsense with Qin Haoshuan. He turned around and walked down the stage. He said to Bai Yu, who was about to go up the stage, "Admit defeat for this match. We will start over from the revival match." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Bai Yu nodded lightly and said to the referee, "We admit defeat for this match." The referee nodded and didn't say anything else. The Black Moon Combat Academy was bound to lose. However, this wasn't important. What was important was that Qin Chuan and Qin Haoshuan had to sign a life and death agreement to determine life and death on the stage. The 6 Great Academies ranking tournament had been held for hundreds of years. However, in the eyes of the judge, even if Qin Chuan didn't sign a life and death agreement with Qin Haoshuan, he wouldn't be able to live for long. He had insulted the Qin family's ancestor and was destined to die. The first official match of the 6 Great Academies ranking tournament was won by the first academy of the Star Dragon Academy. However, not many people were paying attention to this matter. Almost everyone's attention was focused on the life and death agreement between Qin Chuan and Qin Haoshuan. No one would have thought that after Qin Chuan rejected Qin Haoshuan's invitation, things would turn out like this. For a moment, many people in the audience were cursing Qin Chuan. They thought that Qin Chuan was courting death by speaking rudely to the Qin family's ancestor. The Qin family's ancestor was a powerful nascent soul cultivator. He had always been a pillar of the Federation. If it wasn't for the protection of a powerful cultivator like the Qin family's ancestor, the human world would have been invaded by the demon race. Qin Huan had openly insulted the Qin family's ancestor. This was the same as making an enemy out of everyone. Qin Huan, you are too impulsive. In the medical room, the pale Long Xiao looked at Qin Huan helplessly. It was a big mistake to speak rudely to a nascent soul cultivator. Qin Huan looked at Lu Zi, who was still unconscious. He pursed his lips and said, I know I shouldn't have spoken rudely to a big shot like the Qin family's ancestor. However, since it has already happened, there is nothing to say. Qin Huan wasn't a fool. He knew that he would get into big trouble if he spoke rudely to the Qin family's ancestor. However, he didn't care about this anymore. He wanted to kill Qin Haoshuan, the Qilin son of the Qin family. Would the Qin family's ancestor just watch Qin Haoshuan die in his hands? Wouldn't he take revenge? Since he was destined to be enemies with the Qin family, did he need to care so much? Seeing Qin Huan's attitude, Long Xiao sighed and said, Do you really want to fight to the death with Qin Haoshuan in the arena? If Qin Huan didn't kill Qin Haoshuan, he might still be able to survive. However, if Qin Huan really killed Qin Haoshuan, the Qin family would definitely want Qin Huan to die without a burial place. I said that no one can stop me if I want to kill him. Qin Huan's attitude was very firm. No one could stop him from killing Qin Haoshuan. Beep beep beep. Qin Huan's optical computer suddenly rang. He picked it up and saw that it was a video call from Ningya. Qin Huan accepted the video call. He looked at Ningya, who was wearing an elegant white cheongsam, and said in a low voice, Teacher. So you still have me as your teacher? Ningya looked at Qin Huan with a cold face and said, You don't even care about the old ancestor of the Qin family. What am I, a little golden core realm complete realm, to you? Qin Huan was silent. He didn't know how to respond to Ningya. Why aren't you saying anything? What happened to your domineering attitude in the arena just now? Looking at Qin Huan's silent appearance, Ningya couldn't help but feel angry. Look at your dejected appearance. If I didn't know better, I would have thought that you had already lost to Qin Haoshuan. Wait and see how I will deal with you when I arrive at Star Dragon City. Teacher, you want to come to Star Dragon City? Qin Huan raised his head and looked at Ningya in surprise. Ningya glared at Qin Huan and said, I want to stay in Azure Ancient City peacefully. However, you are such a troublemaker. How can I sit still? Qin Huan felt very guilty when he heard this. He said to Ningya, Teacher, all right. Ningya sighed and said helplessly, Who asked me to boast that I wouldn't intervene in the affairs of the younger generation? However, I would definitely block the older generation for you. I've lived for so many years, but I've only taken in one student like you. How can I watch you die at such a young age? Qin Huan looked at Ningya with some astonishment. Teacher, you mean, if you can't defeat Qin Haoshuan and die in the arena, you will be a waste. So what if you die? Ningya stared deeply at Qin Huan as she spoke in an incomparably resolute tone. However, if you survive, anyone who wants to touch you will have to ask for my permission first. As long as I'm alive, even if the patriarch of the Qin family personally comes, he can forget about touching a single strand of your hair. After the video call ended, Qin Huan was still staring blankly at the optical computer. He didn't come back to his senses. When Long Xiao, who was standing to the side, saw Qin Huan's expression, he couldn't help but say to Qin Huan in an envious tone, You are really lucky to have a teacher like Teacher Ning. Chapter 278. Originally, not many people took the enmity between Qin Huan and Qin Haoshuan to heart. They thought that it was just a dispute between young people. However, it was different now. Qin Huan had openly spoken rudely to the Qin family's ancestor. If Qin Haoshuan didn't do anything, he would definitely be criticized. Because this matter involved the Qin family's ancestor, The reporters were very cautious and didn't mention anything about the Qin family's ancestor in their reports. They only reported on the enmity between Qin Chuan and Qin Haoshuan. However, even so, the popularity of this matter was still high. Not many people cared about the competition in the afternoon. Qin family study room. Qin Yiming looked at Qin Haoshuan with a gloomy expression. He slammed the table and said sternly, "Do you know how much trouble you've caused for our Qin family?" Facing Qin Yiming's reprimand, Qin Haoshuan lowered his head and didn't say anything. This matter was caused by him, so he had to bear this reprimand. Seeing Qin Haoshuan's performance, Qin Yiming snorted and said, "Tell me, if you meet Qin Chuan, how confident are you in defeating him?" 100%. Qin Haoshuan replied without hesitation, "I will definitely make this person who dares to insult the ancestor die without a burial ground." Now, Qin Haoshuan's hatred for Qin Chuan could be said to be monstrous. If he couldn't cut Qin Chuan into pieces, it would be difficult for him to dispel the hatred in his heart. Remember, you can't lose this battle no matter what. If you lose, our Qin family will lose face. Qin Yiming looked coldly at Qin Haoshuan. "If you weren't the ancestor's grandson and my son, just based on the trouble you've caused for our Qin family today, it's enough for you to die 10,000 times. I know I was wrong." Qin Haoshuan straightforwardly admitted his mistake. He had no intention of quibbling. "After leaving my place, don't rest or eat. Go directly to the cultivation room where the ancestor is in seclusion and kneel until tomorrow morning. Although the ancestor won't interrupt his cultivation to come out and see you, you have to let others see your sincere attitude of admitting your mistake. Do you understand?" "I understand." The conversation between father and son came to an end. Qin Haoshuan left the study and walked towards the cultivation room where the ancestor was in seclusion. On the way, he met Qin Ju, who was waiting for him. Qin Ju stood in the middle of the road and looked at Qin Haoshuan, who was slowly walking over. She took a step forward and slapped Qin Haoshuan's face. "Why?" Qin Ju looked at Qin Haoshuan sternly. "Answer me." Qin Haoshuan raised his hand and touched his burning cheek. Then, he looked at Qin Ju. "This is the first time you've hit me since I was young. Your father doesn't understand you, but I do. You're deliberately provoking Qin Chuan today. Everything is under your control. So what?" "I wasn't the one who forced him to say those words. I wasn't the one who suggested the life and death agreement. Moreover, he was indeed the one who rejected my recruitment and insulted me." Hearing this, Qin Ju's expression couldn't help but become pained. She asked Qin Haoshuan in confusion, "Why are you doing this? I also want to ask you, Aunt. Why are you so careful to protect that Qin Chuan?" Qin Haoshuan looked at Qin Ju with a puzzled expression. "He's just an outsider. Could it be that Aunt is tempted?" When he said this, Qin Haoshuan found it hard to believe. How could Qin Ju be tempted by a hothead like Qin Chuan? "There's another reason why I'm protecting Qin Chuan." Qin Ju pursed his lips and said, "You can't kill him. He's the one who wants to kill me." Qin Haoshuan smiled lightly. "Aunt, you can't stop me, nor can you stop him. I will stop him." Qin Ju turned around and left. She had to stop all of this from happening. In the office, the atmosphere today was exceptionally gloomy. It was not only because of the defeat, but also because Qin Chuan had caused a huge disaster by standing up for Lu Zi. Now, the entrance of the office had been thrown everywhere by the people who had heard the news. It was extremely dirty and smelly. They stood at the entrance and cursed at Qin Chuan, wanting Qin Chuan to commit suicide to apologize. Qin Chuan did not stay with the others. He lay alone in the room, not thinking about anything. He looked at the roof with empty eyes. He was not someone who would be easily disturbed by the outside world. However, this did not mean that he liked to hear those unpleasant words. Although he could not hear the sounds outside in the living room, compared to the gloomy expressions on everyone's faces, he preferred to be alone and quiet. Even if Lu Zi, who had woken up, wanted to see him, she was rejected by him. Now, he did not want to see anyone. Dong dong dong. There was a knock on the door. Qin Chuan turned his head and looked in the direction of the door. Come in. The door was pushed open from the outside. The person who walked in was Chen Chongqing. He glanced at Qin Chuan and said, "Boss, someone wants to see you. It's the commander of the 10th Army, General Qin." Hearing Chen Chongqing's words, Qin Chuan was slightly stunned. He pondered for a moment, sat up, and said to Chen Chongqing, "Go and invite General Qin in." Chen Chongqing turned around and left. Not long after, Qin Ju, who was dressed in black, appeared at the door. Qin Chuan sat cross-legged on the bed and looked at Qin Ju, who slowly walked in. He smiled and asked, "General Qin, are you here to denounce me?" "I'm here." Qin Ju looked at Qin Chuan with a complicated gaze and said, "What do you want me to do for you to give up on signing a life and death agreement with Haoshuan?" Qin Chuan looked at Qin Ju in surprise and asked in confusion, "Why are you doing this? Are you worried that I'll kill Qin Haoshuan?" As Qin Haoshuan's aunt, shouldn't you be very confident in Qin Haoshuan? Qin Ju shook his head and said, "You and Haoshuan, I don't want to see anyone get hurt." This time, Qin Chuan was even more surprised. Is it because of teacher? Qin Chuan was very puzzled. Could it be that the relationship between Ningya and Qin Ju was so good that Qin Ju would care about him speaking rudely to the Qin family's ancestor? No matter what the reason is, it doesn't matter. Qin Ju looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "I can vouch for you. You can personally apologize to my father and then admit in front of the media that you are young and ignorant. You offended my father because of anger. It was an unintentional mistake. Then, the Qin family will forgive you and everything will be exposed." Qin Chuan looked at Qin Ju in astonishment and said, "You actually thought about it so thoroughly? This is the best solution, so do you agree?" This was the best solution that Qin Ju could think of now. "Sorry, I can't." Qin Chuan shook his head and said firmly, "I must kill Qin Haoshuan. It's useless for anyone to persuade me." Chapter 279. The first day of the 6 Great Academies qualifiers officially ended. Under the leadership of the Little Sword Celestial, the Divine Sword Academy defeated the Black Sky Sex-affiliated university and won the 2nd spot to advance to the semifinals. However, not many people paid attention to this because most of their attention was focused on Qin Chuan and Qin Haoshuan. The incident between Qin Chuan and Qin Haoshuan had already spread throughout the entire Federation. Although the Qin family had not made any moves yet, everyone knew that this was just the calm before the storm. The Qin family would definitely not let this matter go so easily. At night, Zhou Lin arrived at the Black Moon Combat Academy's office. She frowned when she saw the mess outside the door. She glanced at the passers-by who were eyeing her covetously and walked straight to the office's door. She pressed the dirt-covered doorbell. Soon, the office's door opened a crack, allowing Zhou Lin to enter from the side. The people surrounding her did not force their way in. Instead, they threw the objects in their hands into the crack. Fortunately, Zhou Lin was fast enough and those objects did not hit the door. Zhou Lin heard the commotion behind her and said to Wang Bo, who opened the door for her, "You should be able to call the police, right?" Wang Bo smiled bitterly and said helplessly, "Don't mention it. Of course we called the police. However, when the police arrived, these people dispersed. When the police left, they came back. It's really a headache." "Where's Qin Chuan?" Zhou Lin asked Wang Bo, "Where is he?" Qin Chuan said that he doesn't want to see anyone. Wang Bo shrugged and said, "Perhaps you'll have come here for nothing. He doesn't want to see anyone, but that doesn't mean that he won't see me." Zhou Lin walked inside and said to Wang Bo, "Take me to his room." Seeing that Zhou Lin insisted on seeing Qin Chuan, Wang Bo, who knew that the relationship between Qin Chuan and Zhou Lin was not ordinary, felt helpless. He could only lead the way. Along the way, they met many people. Everyone was surprised by Zhou Lin's arrival, but they did not ask too much. Everyone knew that Zhou Lin was here for Qin Chuan. Wang Bo stood in front of Qin Chuan's door and said to Zhou Lin, "This is Qin Chuan's room. You can go in by yourself." "Thank you." Zhou Lin thanked Wang Bo and then pushed the door open. She thought that the door would be locked. It was not locked, and the door was opened easily. The lights in the room were not turned on, and it was very dim. Zhou Lin stood at the door for a while, then walked towards the bed. She had only taken 2 steps when she heard Qin Chuan's voice in the darkness. "Who?" "It's me." After a simple question and answer, the room became quiet again. Zhou Lin slowly walked to the side of the bed and looked at Qin Chuan, who was lying on the bed. She actually sat on the side of the bed, took off her shoes, and lay down next to Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan saw Zhou Lin's action. A subtle look flashed across his eyes. He said softly, "Senior sister, why are you here?" Zhou Lin put her hands behind her head and looked at the dark ceiling. She said to Qin Chuan, "Qin Chongxiao, the ancestor of the Qin clan, is 216 years old. He is in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. He cultivates the unique skill of the Qin clan, the extreme wind swordsmanship. His extreme wind swordsmanship is superb. That's why he is called the extreme wind swordsman." Qin Chuan was surprised to hear Zhou Lin talking about Qin Chongxiao. He asked, "Senior sister, how do you know so much about the ancestor of the Qin clan?" Zhou Lin turned and looked at Qin Chuan seriously. She said, "If you die in the hands of the ancestor of the Qin clan, I will avenge you." Qin Chuan did not know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at Zhou Lin and said, "Senior sister, are you cursing me? I am only in the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. I can't help you against Qin Chongxiao, who is in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. All I can do is avenge you," Zhou Lin said seriously. If Qin Chuan really met with misfortune, she would kill Qin Chongxiao within 30 years to avenge Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan was stunned by Zhou Lin's serious attitude. He smiled and said, "Senior sister, I won't die. That's good. I don't want you to be in any danger. I don't have many friends in this world. You are one of them and the one I cherish the most." "Senior sister, you sound like you are confessing to me." "Just take it as a confession. I'm afraid that I won't have the chance to say it in the future." This time, Qin Chuan was completely stunned. He had said those words to liven up the atmosphere, but he did not expect Zhou Lin to admit it so readily. When she saw Qin Chuan's dazed expression, Zhou Lin seemed to be frightened by her own boldness. She once again turned her gaze towards the ceiling as she softly said, "Let me tell you my story." "Okay." Qin Chuan agreed and played with his fingers as if nothing had happened. The next morning, Zhou Lin turned sideways to look at Qin Chuan, who was still asleep. After a while, she slowly got up, put on her shoes, and left the house. As she was leaving, she coincidentally bumped into Wang Bo, who had come to deliver breakfast to Qin Chuan. Wang Bo looked at Zhou Lin, who had just left the house, in astonishment. "Yes." Zhou Lin indifferently answered Wang Bo's question. Then she took a bite of the bun on the plate and said, "Qin Chuan slept very late last night. Don't disturb him now. Come back after 10 o'clock. I still have a match, so I'll leave first." Wang Bo stood there and watched Zhou Lin leave. He could not believe that Qin Chuan and Zhou Lin actually spent the night together. If someone said that nothing happened, he would never believe it. May 30th, 9 o'clock in the morning. The third match of the 6 Great Academies ranking tournament was between Federation Military University and Starry Sky Academy. The Queen of Blades, Zhou Lin, took the stage and defeated Federation Military University in a 1 versus 5 match. She successfully advanced to the semi-finals. The result of this battle shocked the world. No one thought that Federation Military University, who had such a strong player like Shimin Bei, would lose so thoroughly. It must be known that in the past 6 Great Academies ranking tournament, Starry Sky Academy had never advanced to the semi-finals. They had always been at the bottom of the rankings. Although Zhou Lin's appearance today made everyone's eyes light up, no one really took Zhou Lin to heart. However, it was this person who was ignored by everyone who had unbelievably completed the magnificent feat of winning 5 in a row. For a time, Zhou Lin's name resounded through the streets and alleys of Star Dragon City. It even faintly overshadowed the matter of Qin Chuan and Qin Haoshuan signing a life and death agreement yesterday. In the eyes of ordinary people, this might not be anything special. However, in the eyes of some people, this was deliberately hyping up and building momentum for Zhou Lin. The rise of a commoner genius was always the most eye-catching. Chapter 280. The first round of the 6 Great Academies official ranking competition had ended, and the revival round was next. In the revival round, the main focus was naturally on the Black Moon Combat Academy and Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan and Qin Haoshuan were at each other's throat. If Qin Chuan could lead his team out of the revival round and into the semi-finals, then it would naturally add to the suspense and hype of the finals. However, if Qin Chuan's team was defeated in the revival round, then what awaited Qin Chuan would be endless ridicule and abuse. He might even be hunted down by the Qin family. At that time, no one would sympathize with Qin Chuan, and they would feel that Qin Chuan was pitiful. Those who spoke arrogant words without any strength should pay the price. It was important to know that the official ranking competition of the 6 Great Academies was different from the freshman competition. No matter which team entered the revival round, they were all extremely strong, and they all had extremely famous celebrity contestants. It was no exaggeration to say that the Black Moon Combat Academy was definitely the weakest team in the revival round. After being mercilessly crushed by Qin Haoshuan, how much strength these people could still display was something worth pondering. If they still relied on Qin Chuan's outstanding performance like they did in the freshman competition, then the Black Moon Combat Academy would definitely lose. The revival round's lot-drawing ceremony was not broadcasted live, and it was only announced after the results were out. Among the 3 teams, the Black Heaven Sex-affiliated universities team had a bye. The first match would be between the Black Moon Combat Academy and the Federation's military university. Regarding this result, some people were happy while others were sad. The Black Moon Combat Academy had already been pushed to the teeth of the storm because of the conflict between Qin Chuan and Qin Haoshuan. In the revival round, the Black Moon Combat Academy would need to win 2 matches in a row before they could break out of the encirclement. It could be said that they had entered a hellish challenge. Many people who originally had a trace of hope for the Black Moon Combat Academy had now lost their confidence. No one believed that the Black Moon Combat Academy would be able to win 2 matches in a row and enter the semi-finals. The revival round was set to be held on the 1st of June at 9 in the morning. The Black Moon Combat Academy and the Federation's military university only had 1 day to adjust. It was during this period of time that a nightmare occurred for the Black Moon Combat Academy. The star contestant of the Federal Military University, Shimin Bei, had successfully advanced to the late stage of the Foundation establishment stage in his agitation due to his loss to Zhou Lin. Shimin Bei's strength was already extremely strong. When he had just entered the early Foundation establishment stage, he had already galloped through the battlefield and killed countless demons. All of his abilities had been gained through actual combat. After that, he had successfully advanced to the middle Foundation establishment stage on the battlefield and killed dozens of demon generals in a row, making a name for himself. Today, Shimin Bei had learned from his humiliation and bravely advanced to the late Foundation establishment stage. For the Federal Military Academy, this was definitely a joyous occasion for them, who had advanced to the semi-finals of the Revival Tournament. However, for the Black Moon Combat Academy, this was one disaster after another. Now, even some of Qinchuan's loyal fans couldn't help but worry for Qinchuan. Against the mid-stage foundation establishment stage Ximen Bei, Qinchuan might be able to put up a fight. However, against the late-stage foundation establishment stage Ximen Bei, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens for Qinchuan to win. When they heard this news, everyone from the Black Moon Combat Academy felt their hearts sink to the extreme. They all had some understanding of Ximen Bei's strength, and they had also seen the video of Ximen Bei's fight with Zhou Lin. Although Ximen Bei had lost to Zhou Lin, it had only been a narrow defeat, and he hadn't been crushed. After the results of the draw had been announced, they had asked Zhou Lin for advice. Zhou Lin had personally admitted that she had been able to defeat Ximen Bei because of their attribute. If that wasn't the case, she might not have been able to defeat Ximen Bei. Ximen Bei has advanced to the late-stage foundation establishment stage. His realm has increased by a small level, and his strength has also increased. Even senior Zhou Lin had to rely on her attributes to barely defeat Ximen Bei. Why did we have to encounter such a troublesome fellow? Chen Chongqing looked at the news report on the optical computer with a worried expression. Originally, they didn't have much of an advantage against the Federal Military University. Now that Ximen Bei's strength had increased, it would be even harder for them to win. Hearing Chen Chongqing's sigh, Blue Pool frowned slightly and said, "We should have more confidence in Boss." Chen Chongqing sighed and said, "Of course I have confidence in Boss, but we can't be too blindly optimistic. You can't really think that Boss can stop the Qin family's patriarch, right?" Chen Chongqing's words left Blue Pool somewhat speechless. Even in his dreams, he wouldn't dare to think that an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator could stop a nascent soul cultivator. When Han Ting, who was sitting not far away, heard Chen Chongqing and Blue Pool's conversation, his countenance changed again and again. He suddenly got up and walked towards the cultivation room, heading straight for Qinchuan. When Qinchuan, who was in the midst of weight training, saw Han Ting appear before him, he put down the equipment in his hands and wiped his sweat with a towel. He said to Han Ting, "Senior, are you looking for me for something?" Han Ting looked at Qinchuan with an extremely guilty gaze and said, "Qinchuan, I'm really sorry." Hearing Han Ting suddenly apologize to him, Qinchuan was a little shocked. He asked in confusion, "Senior, what do you mean by this? If I had given up my spot for you in the first round, perhaps the situation would be very different from now." It could be said that Han Ting's heart was filled with extreme bitterness. He had only stood on the arena of his dreams for less than a minute. At the moment the whistle blew, he had fallen off the arena. To him, all of this was a complete and utter humiliation. Even now, he didn't dare to recall it. Such an outcome was completely different from his dream of fighting with all his might. If he had known earlier that this would be the outcome, he would have given up his spot to Qinchuan long ago. This way, perhaps they wouldn't have entered the revival round, and Qinchuan and Qin Haoshuan wouldn't have had such an intense conflict, resulting in such a situation. In the end, it was all his fault for being too selfish. He was really the most useless person among all of them. Hearing Han Ting's words and seeing the guilty expression on his face, Qinchuan smiled and said to Han Ting, "Senior, before things happen, no one knows what the outcome will be. It's very normal and very reasonable that you want to experience the stage of the official competition. I've never blamed you. Moreover, the matter between Qin Haoshuan and me isn't as simple as you think." Qinchuan, all right, Senior, if you really care about me, you shouldn't disturb my cultivation at this time, and you shouldn't say these words to me. Qinchuan helplessly looked at Han Ting and said, "What you need to do next is to be my loyal fan and watch how I beat up my opponents." Ximen Bei is now in the late stage of the foundation establishment stage, so what? Qinchuan chuckled and said indifferently, "As long as he's not in the golden core stage, I have nothing to fear." Chapter 284. Although Qin Chuan and Shimin Bei didn't use the power of their innate runes, but from the collision of their spiritual qi, it could be felt that Qin Chuan's spiritual qi was more violent and powerful, while Shimin Bei's spiritual qi was more broad and boundless. Both spiritual qi and Shimin Bei's spiritual qi were somewhat similar to the attribute of their innate runes. Therefore, in this collision of spiritual qi, both sides were extremely distinct. At this time, Qin Chuan's spiritual qi had transformed into a long dragon, and just like a greedy snake, it was crazily devouring Shimin Bei's spiritual qi. But Shimin Bei didn't pay any attention to this, and let Qin Chuan devour his spiritual qi. He just unceasingly stimulated his spiritual qi to maintain the current situation and prevent it from worsening. With the passage of time, the doubts in Qin Chuan's heart became more and more. He always felt that Shimin Bei was deliberately letting him devour spiritual qi, but what benefit would it bring to Shimin Bei? Just when Qin Chuan was thinking about these questions, under his control, that huge dragon that was unceasingly devouring Shimin Bei's spiritual qi suddenly became somewhat stiff and slow. Perceiving this change, Qin Chuan's complexion couldn't help but slightly change. Unknowingly, that huge dragon had unexpectedly turned into a light green color, and faintly, it was about to break away from his control. Subconsciously, Qin Chuan looked towards Shimin Bei. Seeing the victorious smile on Shimin Bei's face, Qin Chuan finally understood that the reason why his huge dragon was showing signs of breaking away from his control was because it had devoured a large amount of Shimin Bei's spiritual qi. My spiritual qi is of the wood attribute, and it grows and multiplies endlessly. Although your huge dragon has devoured a lot of my spiritual qi and seems to have weakened my strength, but in fact, your huge dragon can't quickly digest the spiritual qi that it has devoured. When the remaining spiritual qi accumulates to a certain extent, this huge dragon may not be under your control anymore. From the beginning, Shimin Bei didn't really intend to confront Qin Chuan head-on. He wanted to use softness to conquer strength, and from the inside, he wanted to collapse Qin Chuan's fortress. Once there was no spiritual qi huge dragon, Qin Chuan would inevitably be unable to maintain his stability, and in this way, he would win. Let's give it a try. Qin Chuan shouted, and the spiritual qi within his body surged, and crazily poured into the huge dragon's body. He started a battle with Shimin Bei for the control. Just when Qin Chuan and Shimin Bei were crazily fighting for the control, the commentary platform also burst out with exclamations. This is really a good scheme. Shimin Bei allowed Qin Chuan to devour his spiritual qi, and I originally thought that it was because Qin Chuan's spiritual qi was too aggressive, but I didn't expect that this was actually done by Shimin Bei deliberately. Now, Qin Chuan has fallen into Shimin Bei's trap, and once he loses control of the huge dragon, he will inevitably lose. Compared to Shimin Bei, who has been on the battlefield for a long time, Qin Chuan's experience is still too little. All of us thought that Shimin Bei would be just like his performance on the battlefield, but we didn't expect that he would actually play a trick. Shimin Bei is really good at both civil and martial arts. Those who couldn't perceive the changes in the situation heard the commentators' words, and some of them cheered for Shimin Bei, and some of them were worried for Qin Chuan. Shimin Bei was originally stronger than Qin Chuan, and now he had the advantage. Didn't this mean that there was a high probability that Qin Chuan would lose? Just when everyone was discussing spiritedly, an earth-shattering dragon roar suddenly resounded in the arena, and everyone saw that between Qin Chuan and Shimin Bei, a huge blue dragon suddenly jumped out, and with a roar it rushed towards Qin Chuan. Seeing this scene, everyone subconsciously exclaimed, was Qin Chuan going to lose? Just as the huge dragon's mouth was about to bite Qin Chuan, the huge dragon's body froze in midair, as if it had been paralyzed. Qin Chuan's complexion was pale as he grinned towards Shimin Bei, who had a startled expression on his face and said, "I'll let you have the huge dragon, but victory is mine." Before Qin Chuan's voice fell, the huge dragon's body suddenly swelled, and an extremely violent fluctuation of spiritual energy descended on the arena, setting off a monstrous wave of spiritual energy. Under this crazy wave of spiritual energy, Shimin Bei's body was like a small boat in a storm, and he was only able to persist for a short moment, and then he was swept away by the shock wave and was forced to retreat. At this time, standing opposite of Shimin Bei, Qin Chuan actually laughed, although he was also forced to retreat, but he was slower than Shimin Bei by a beat. In other words, according to the rules, he won. The violent spiritual energy shock wave almost completely overturned the entire arena, and in the midst of the mess, Qin Chuan was laughing heartily, while Shimin Bei had a helpless expression on his face. When the audience saw the scene on the stage, their eyes widened. Who would have thought that the stage, which was brand new and flat just a second ago, would become such a mess in an instant? Such a terrifying power was probably enough to tear an ordinary person to pieces in an instant. Who would have thought that in the end this spiritual energy collision actually turned into a contest of physical strength? Although the huge dragon broke away from Qin Chuan's control, and the scale of victory was tilted towards Shimin Bei, Qin Chuan overturned the table, and made the two of them return to the same starting line, and then relying on the strength of his physical body, he was able to persist in this spiritual energy storm for a longer time than Shimin Bei, and obtained the final victory. I just calculated, Qin Chuan only lasted 0.4 seconds longer than Shimin Bei. It was this minute gap that was almost impossible for ordinary people to notice, and it allowed Qin Chuan to obtain victory. However, this is only an agreement between Qin Chuan and Shimin Bei. If Shimin Bei doesn't want to admit it, then Qin Chuan can't do anything about it. Now, whether this match continues or ends, it all depends on Shimin Bei's decision. The moment the commentator's voice fell, Qin Chuan had already climbed up from the ruins and slowly walked in front of Shimin Bei, and with his hand on Shimin Bei's neck, he said with a smile, "KO." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Shimin Bei smiled, and pulled Qin Chuan's hand to stand up, and said, "In the past, I didn't believe in familiarity at first sight, but this time, I believe in it." Shimin Bei had been isolated since childhood, and he had almost no friends, but today, he made the first close friend in his life. "Okay, you should go down now." Qin Chuan grinned. "I still want to continue the match with your Federal Military University's other students. Those people are just good-for-nothings." Shimin Bei smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "When the time comes, hit them harder, at least don't make them look better than me, or else I will lose face." "Don't worry, I will definitely beat them," Qin Chuan promised Shimin Bei. He liked to do this kind of thing the most. Under the ring, the Federal Military University's students heard the conversation between Qin Chuan and Shimin Bei, and they couldn't help but have black lines on their faces. It seemed like there was a traitor among them. Chapter 285. Black Heaven Sect Affiliated University, Cultivation Room. Chen Aochu sat on a soft and comfortable sofa as he gloomily stared at the crystal screen. His expression was quite ugly as he watched Qin Chuan slaughtering everyone in the arena. "Stop looking." A tall figure slowly walked over and turned off the crystal screen. She said to Chen Aochu, "Looking at this now will only make you upset. There's no other use." Chen Aochu raised his head and looked at the woman beside him. He coldly said, "Shimin Bei lost to Qin Chuan. The Black Moon Combat Academy defeated the Federal Military University. In the next battle, we will face Qin Chuan." "So what?" The woman stood beside Chen Aochu and asked, "Are you worried that you won't beat Qin Chuan's opponent?" "Li Sairu," Chen Aochu shouted, "do you really want to see me lose to Qin Chuan and lose face in front of Chen Chongqing?" Li Sairu gently smiled and asked, "Why would you think that? The entire Black Heaven sect knows that you were once Chen Chongqing's fiancé, and that he deeply loves you. However, I forcefully annulled the engagement and destroyed the beautiful marriage between the two of you. This caused Chen Chongqing to run away from home and go to the Black Moon Combat Academy. Since then, you have been separated from him. Don't you hate me? Chen Aochu stared at Li Sairu, trying to find some clues from Li Sairu's expression. I'm not a fickle woman. Since you and I have an engagement, I will naturally follow the arrangements of my elders and become your wife. Li Sairu smiled and said, Chen Chongqing has already returned to Star Dragon City for a month. If I really had feelings for him, I would have gone to see him long ago. Hearing Li Sairu's words, Chen Aochu's expression softened a little. During this time, he had sent people to keep an eye on Li Sairu. Li Sairu had indeed not gone to see Chen Chongqing, nor had she privately mentioned Chen Chongqing. From this, it could be seen that Li Sairu was not lying. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Chen Aochu pulled Li Sairu into his embrace, burying his handsome face in her hair. Breathing in her fresh fragrance, he couldn't help but feel desire rising in his heart. All right, I won't disturb your cultivation anymore. Let's do our best for the competition the day after tomorrow. Li Sairu left Chen Aochu's arms and smiled at him. Then, she turned and walked out of the training room. Looking at Li Sairu's perfect figure, the light in Chen Aochu's eyes became hotter and hotter. Not only did he want to occupy Chen Chongqing's woman, he also wanted to make Chen Chongqing suffer a crushing defeat. He would definitely win the next match. After Shimin Bei was defeated by Qin Chuan, the next match became a one-man show for Qin Chuan. The remaining 4 representatives of the Federal Military University were all defeated by Qin Chuan without any effort. Before the start of the competition, no one would have thought that Qin Chuan would be able to have such a strong dominance in the official competition. Although it was only the revival round and Qin Chuan was facing opponents who had been eliminated in the first round, this was enough to show how strong Qin Chuan was. This made everyone involuntarily recall what Long Xiao had said during the interview at the Black Moon Combat Academy. Qin Chuan was the strongest among the younger generation. From his current performance, Qin Chuan could definitely be considered one of the strongest among the younger generation. However, whether or not he was the strongest would depend on how far Qin Chuan could go in the official competition. As for the fans of Star Dragon's first academy, when they saw that Qin Chuan had received such praise, they couldn't help but feel unhappy. Thus, they had no choice but to place their hopes on the Black Sky Sex-affiliated university. They hoped that Chen Aochu could defeat Qin Chuan and make Qin Chuan suffer a crushing defeat. The victorious Black Moon Combat Academy group returned to the office. Looking at the clean and tidy entrance, they were all in a good mood. As long as they could maintain their current state and win consecutive matches, then no one would care about the criticism directed at them anymore. However, it was still difficult to win consecutive matches. They had just defeated one opponent, and they still had to face the Black Sky Sex-affiliated university and their opponents in the semifinals. There was still a long way to go, and now was not the time to relax. After returning to the office, everyone sat together and reviewed the day's matches. The clash of spiritual energies between Qin Chuan and Shimin Bei was naturally the most important. While everyone was talking loudly, Qin Chuan keenly noticed that Chen Chongqing, who had always been the most enthusiastic, was extremely silent. It was as if he had something on his mind. Chongqing, come with me. Qin Chuan suddenly stood up and said to everyone with a smile, Chongqing and I will go get some food for everyone. When Chen Chongqing heard Qin Chuan call out his name, he stood up and followed Qin Chuan out of the living room. The two of them walked to the dining room, one in front and one behind. Along the way, neither of them spoke. When they arrived at the dining room, Qin Chuan suddenly turned to look at Chen Chongqing and asked, "What's on your mind?" Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Chen Chongqing was stunned for a moment. Then, he forced a smile and said, "Nothing." Qin Chuan looked at Chen Chongqing. "It must be very uncomfortable to keep it bottled up in your heart." Chen Chongqing was silent for a moment. Then, he suddenly opened the photon computer on his wrist and presented a message to Qin Chuan. The message was very simple. There were no words, only a picture of a very beautiful woman. Looking at the picture, Qin Chuan was somewhat puzzled. What did this mean? Her name is Li Sairu. She was supposed to be my fiancée. Speaking of the past, Chen Chongqing's face could not help but reveal a touch of loneliness, but Chen Aochu, that bastard, coveted Sairu. He forcefully separated me and Sairu and replaced me as Sairu's fiancée. He just sent this picture to me. Hearing Chen Chongqing's explanation, Qin Chuan could not help but be stunned. He really did not think that Chen Chongqing and Chen Aochu actually had such a past. We are about to face off against the Black Heaven Sect's affiliated university. He sent this to you to mess with your mentality. Qin Chuan pursed his lips and said to Chen Chongqing, "Do you still like this woman?" Chen Chongqing was silent again. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan understood. If Chen Chongqing had already let go of the past, why would he be so sad just because of a picture? When it came to matters of the heart, even Qin Chuan himself knew little about it. He was not qualified to comfort Chen Chongqing. He could only reach out and gently pat Chen Chongqing's shoulder, saying, "The more Chen Aochu messes with you, the more it proves that he is afraid of us. As long as we can defeat the Black Heaven Sect's affiliated university in the arena, we can definitely make Chen Aochu lose face. It will be 10,000 times worse than you are now." Chen Chongqing nodded vigorously and said, "Boss, I will do my best." Chapter 286. As one of the top 10 sects in the Star Dragon Federation, the Xian Tian sect was located on the Xian Tian Peak in Star Dragon City. The Xian Tian Peak was 7,600 meters high and pierced through the clouds. No matter where you were in Star Dragon City, as long as you looked up, you could see the Xian Tian Peak. At this time, on the top of the Xian Tian Peak, a tall and thin figure stood on the edge of the cliff with his hands behind his back. His clothes were fluttering in the wind. His deep eyes penetrated the clouds and overlooked the entire Star Dragon City. His expression was indifferent and cold. Behind this man, an old figure stood respectfully to the side, not making a single sound. "Senior brother, you have been standing behind me for half a day. If you have something to say, just say it." The man in a black robe slowly turned around and looked calmly at the old figure in front of him, waiting for the other party's response. "Sect Master, I want to go down the mountain." The old man called Anan spoke slowly. His voice was hoarse and low, as if he had not spoken for many years. It was a little harsh. "Go down the mountain? Why?" The man in black looked at Anan with a subtle expression and asked, "Is it because you have been quiet for a long time and there are signs of a breakthrough?" Anan had been in the Golden Core realm for many years. If there were signs of a breakthrough, it would definitely be a big deal for the Xian Tian sect. Anan was silent for a moment and then whispered, "No, I just miss my grandson." Hearing Anan's answer, the man in black fell silent. After a long time, he sighed faintly and said to Anan, "All these years, I, Chen Xianfeng, have wronged you and the dead Sect Master. The past is the past. There is no need to mention it again." Anan shook his head gently and said, "I have been in the Golden Core realm for many years and have no hope of a breakthrough. Now, I just want to see my grandson again before I die. I hope Sect Master can agree." When Chen Xianfeng heard this, he couldn't help but reveal a sad expression. Back then, he and Anan were the most outstanding disciples of the Black Heaven sect. As the junior brother, he originally had no hope of succeeding the position of sect leader. However, because of a coincidence, he obtained an extremely precious nascent soul fruit and cultivated to the nascent soul stage, becoming the second nascent soul stage cultivator of the Black Heaven sect. Therefore, he naturally became the successor of the Black Heaven sect and married the daughter of the previous sect leader, Hong Ying. However, there were no feelings between him and Hong Ying. The woman he truly loved was Anan's daughter, Anshiner. That year, he was already 96 years old and Enshiner was only 17 years old. He once vowed to protect Enshiner for a lifetime and not let her suffer the slightest grievance. Only then did Annan agree to marry Enshiner to him. But who would have thought that this happy marriage would only last for 3 years, and then it would be shattered? Senior brother, I didn't protect Xian well back then. I also didn't protect Chongqing well. Chen Xianfeng looked at Annan sadly and said in a low voice, to make it up to you, I will pass the position of patriarch to Chongqing and let Ao Chu assist him. That's not necessary. Annan shook his head and said, in order to maintain the stability of the sect, it's best to let Ao Chu succeed the position. Now that the old patriarch was still alive, Hong Ying was also in the Golden Core realm, and Chen Aochu's performance was outstanding. No matter how one looked at it, Chen Chongqing shouldn't succeed the position of patriarch. If Chen Xianfeng really wanted to push Chen Chongqing to the position, the Black Heaven sect would be in chaos. Maintain the stability of the sect? Chen Xianfeng sneered. If those people had the same resolve as you, Xian, or wouldn't have died back then. When they attacked Xian, didn't they think that the sect would be in chaos because of it? That's because they knew me and knew that I would keep you in check. Annan lowered his head. If you really got angry back then, the Black Heaven sect would have ceased to exist. They knew you, so they bullied you. Senior brother, are you an honest person? Chen Xuanfeng's eyes reddened. I'm a nascent soul realm cultivator, but I can't even protect the woman I love. I can't even get close to my son. I'm afraid that I'm the most useless patriarch of the Black Heaven sect. Annan fell silent and stopped talking. If he continued, he was afraid that something would happen. Seeing that Annan was silent, Chen Xianfeng took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He said to Annan, Senior brother, if you want to go, then go. Thank you, patriarch. I'll take my leave first. Annan thanked Chen Xianfeng and slowly left. Looking at Annan's back, Chen Xianfeng hesitated for a moment and said, Senior brother, in private, just call me junior brother like before. Annan's figure paused for a moment. He didn't respond to Chen Xuanfeng's words and gradually disappeared into the clouds. The second round of the 6 Great Schools Revival Competition would be held on June 3 at 9 a.m. Before that, it would be the off-season. During this period, reporters from various media outlets wanted to interview Qin Chuan and the Black Moon Combat Academy. However, they were all rejected. These reporters couldn't get the latest news and could only report some groundless news to pave the way for the revival competition. During this period, Chen Chongqing was also working hard on his cultivation. This was because, in the revival competition, he would be fighting on the stage. Chongqing, someone is looking for you outside. Bluepool walked into the cultivation room and looked at Chen Chongqing, who was sweating profusely. He said, There's someone in the living room who claims to be your grandfather. I don't know him either. Go and take a look yourself. Hearing Bluepool's words, Chen Chongqing couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. He put down the equipment in his hands and quickly rushed to the living room. When he saw the old figure standing in the living room, he immediately cheered and ran over, jumping into the old man's arms. Grandpa! Annan looked at Chen Chongqing, who was sweating profusely. When he saw the surprised smile on Chen Chongqing's face, he couldn't help but reveal a smile on his old face. He said in a low voice, My good grandson, Grandpa misses you. Grandpa, why are you suddenly here? Chen Chongqing looked at Annan and asked curiously. He knew that the Black Heaven sect's rules were strict. If there weren't any special circumstances, Annan shouldn't be allowed to leave the mountain. I came to see you this time to save you, Yizichen said. Annan looked at Chen Chongqing with kind eyes. The expression on his face was quite complicated. Save me? Chen Chongqing was stunned and puzzled. I'm perfectly fine. Why would I need Grandpa to save me? Don't go on the stage against the Black Heaven sect's affiliated universities. Annan reminded Chen Chongqing, When the time comes, if you must go on the stage, you'll lose no matter who you face. Qin Chongqing turned pale with fright and asked, "Why?" "Because Grandpa wants you to live," Annan said helplessly. Hong Ying has high hopes for Qin Aochu. If the Black Moon Combat Academy defeats the Black Heaven Sex-affiliated universities, the others will be fine. However, you will be in big trouble. Chapter 287. June 3, 7 a.m. in the morning. In the dining hall, Qin Chuan was eating while curiously sizing up Qin Chongqing. He didn't know why, but he felt that Qin Chongqing had a lot on his mind. "I feel that you're very nervous. Is it because you're about to face the Black Heaven Sex-affiliated university?" Qin Chuan hesitated for a moment before he finally asked. He wasn't the kind of person who liked to pry into other people's privacy, but seeing Qin Chongqing like this, he was really worried for him. When he heard Qin Chuan's words, Qin Chongqing pursed his lips and shook his head. "I'm fine. I just didn't rest well yesterday." Qin Chuan gently nodded and said, "I heard that your grandfather came over. Your family, so it's inevitable that you'll have endless topics to talk about. It's normal that you didn't rest well." When he heard Qin Chuan mention Annan, Qin Chongqing's expression couldn't help but change slightly. He looked at Qin Chuan and asked, "Boss, if I don't perform well in the arena today, will you blame me? I knew that you had something on your mind. I was wondering what it was, but it turns out that you're worried that I'll blame you if you don't perform well." Qin Chuan chuckled and said, "As long as you do your best, so what if you lose? It's not like you haven't lost before. When have I ever blamed you?" Qin Chongqing didn't say anything else, and Qin Chuan didn't ask any more questions. There were some things that were useless no matter how much he said. Qin Chongqing could only rely on his own efforts to face his fears and overcome them. Only then would he be able to walk out of this predicament and obtain a new life. From Qin Chuan's point of view, the reason why Qin Chongqing had so many worries and was so cautious was because he had been bullied by Qin Aochu for so many years that it had left a psychological shadow. However, Qin Chuan believed that after today, those psychological shadows would vanish like smoke and the mountain that was pressing down on Qin Chongqing's heart would collapse. Today's revival match was between the Black Moon Combat Academy and the Black Moon Combat Academy. It could be said that it was the highlight of everyone's attention. This match was not only related to the fight for the final spot in the semifinals, but also related to the battle between Qin Chuan and Qin Haoshuan. Many days had passed since Qin Chuan's arrogant words, but the Qin family hadn't done anything about it. In everyone's eyes, this wasn't because the Qin family didn't care, but rather because they were waiting for a result. Qin Chuan's matter had arisen because of Qin Haoshuan, so the best way for the Qin family to deal with it was for Qin Chuan to fight his way out of the encirclement and meet Qin Haoshuan in the finals. Then, Qin Haoshuan would kill Qin Chuan as a warning to others. As for whether or not Qin Chuan would win by luck, that wasn't within the Qin family's scope of consideration. Qin Haoshuan was the Qin family's Qilin son, and he had both strength and luck. It was impossible for him to lose to Qin Chuan. On the other hand, if Qin Chuan lost to Qin Haoshuan before even fighting his way into the finals, then the Qin family wouldn't even need to make a move. Someone would naturally put Qin Chuan to death, and the Qin family would be happy to watch from the sidelines. Of course, these were just some guesses of the crowd, and they might not necessarily be the Qin family's true intentions. All in all, no one was optimistic about Qin Chuan's chances, and no one thought that the Qin family would let Qin Chuan go. At 8 o'clock, Qin Chuan and the crowd walked into the preparation area of the stadium. At this time, the people from the affiliated university of the Mysterious Sky sect had already arrived. There were 5 official representatives from the affiliated university of the Mysterious Sky sect. Apart from Qin Aochu, there were also Li Sairu, Hong Nuan, Hong Nan, and Qin Rue. Apart from Li Sairu, the rest of the people were from the Mysterious Sky sect, and they were also Chen Chongqing's relative. Other people's eyes were filled with tears when they met their relatives, but Chen Chongqing's eyes were exceptionally red when he met his relatives. Chen Chongqing looked at Li Sairu, who was standing next to Chen Aochu, and his expression couldn't help but become a little ugly. However, Hong Nuan still sneered and exposed Chen Chongqing's scars. Chen Chongqing, don't you know how to greet your brother and future sister-in-law when you see them? Hong Nuan looked at Chen Chongqing mockingly and said, Could it be that there's something that you can't say? Hearing Hong Nuan's words, Chen Chongqing's face couldn't help but become gloomier. He stared coldly at Hong Nuan and said sternly, Hong Nuan, your master hasn't said anything yet. What are you, a bitch, barking for? Chen Chongqing's sarcastic retort made Hong Nuan furious. You're courting death. That's enough, Nuan Nuan. Just as Hong Nuan was about to hit Chen Chongqing in anger, Chen Aochu stepped forward and stopped her. Chen Aochu slowly stepped forward and asked Chen Chongqing lightly, Since you've returned to Star Dragon City, why don't you go home and have a look? There's nothing to see. Chen Chongqing sneered. You treat me like a dog, but I've never treated you as a human. Since we both hate each other, why should we meet? While speaking, Chen Chongqing involuntarily looked at Li Sairu, who was standing at the side. He forced a smile and said, Do you want me to see you two together before I'm satisfied? Alas, I can't help it if you think that way. Chen Aochu sighed and said, But when we meet in the arena later, I hope we won't meet. Then, Chen Aochu turned his gaze to Qin Chuan and said with a smile, This must be the famous miracle youth, Qin Chuan. I've heard a lot about you. Qin Chuan looked at Chen Aochu with a subtle expression and said, I've also heard of young Master Chen's reputation. Now that I've met you, you really live up to your reputation. Chen Aochu looked at Qin Chuan with some surprise. He did not expect Qin Chuan to be so friendly to him. Not only was Chen Aochu surprised, but other people who were familiar with Qin Chuan were also surprised by Qin Chuan's attitude towards Chen Aochu. Since when was Qin Chuan so easy to talk to? Just when everyone was surprised by Qin Chuan's attitude, Hong Nuan sneered and said to Chen Chongqing, Did you see that? Your new backer has to be respectful when he sees Aochu. I really don't know what you're so proud of. Hearing Chen Nuan's words, Chen Chongqing was about to refute but was stopped by Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan grinned and said, Chongqing, although mastering the beast language is something to be proud of, you're always using the beast language to communicate with dogs. It's not good for your character. In the future, it's better not to do such things so that you won't be treated as trash with a human face and a beast heart. When Qin Chuan's voice fell, everyone suddenly quieted down. Everyone looked at Qin Chuan with a strange expression. Just now, you were being polite to him and saying that he lived up to his reputation. Were you implying that Chen Aochu was really a beast with a human face and a beast heart? Qin Chuan, there's no point in flaunting your words. Let's see who's the real deal in the arena. Chen Aochu took a deep look at Qin Chuan and then turned to leave. He had already said what he needed to say. If he continued to bicker with Qin Chuan, it would damage his image as a noble young master. It was better to leave. Seeing that Chen Aochu was about to leave, Qin Chuan smiled and greeted him. Take care, Chen Shouxin. Chapter 288. Boss, thank you for standing up for me. Chen Chongqing looked gratefully at Qin Chuan. At this time, only Qin Chuan could make him feel the preciousness of friendship. You've been calling me boss for almost a year. As your boss, how could I let a little brother like you suffer a loss? Qin Chuan chuckled. He stretched out his hand and patted Chen Chongqing on the shoulder. All right, let's not talk about those useless things. Properly adjust your state of mind, and let them experience your glory on the arena later. On the other side, Chen Aochu sat on the sofa with a cold expression. He looked at the people sitting around him and coldly said, In the competition, if Qin Chuan isn't the first to go up, Chen Rue, you will go up. No matter who you face, you must beat them up for me. Chen Rue, who had been called out by Chen Aochu, nodded and said, I will definitely beat them up. Aochu, Chen Chongqing has been disrespectful to you. I suggest that we report this situation to the sect's disciplinary elders. We should forcefully arrest Chen Chongqing and punish him as a warning to others. Hong Nuan coldly looked at Chen Chongqing's figure in the distance. She looked as if she wanted to tear Chen Chongqing to pieces. There's no need for that. Hong Nan, who had been silent all this time, shook her head and said, doing so won't cause any trouble for Chen Chongqing. On the contrary, it will make Aochu bear the infamy of being narrow-minded. It's not worth it. I think we should just let Chen Chongqing wander outside. As long as he doesn't come back, we won't see him and won't be affected by him. Hearing Hong Nan's words, Chen Aochu nodded in agreement. He felt that Hong Nan was right. He was disgusted by Chen Chongqing because of the 6 Great Academies ranking competition. Once the competition was over, Chen Chongqing would naturally leave Star Dragon City and might never return. Since that was the case, there was no need for them to waste too much time and energy on Chen Chongqing. The most important thing now is how to win the next competition, Chen Aochu coldly said. If we lose today, none of us will have a good time when we return. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. If Chen Chongqing wasn't there, then losing to the Black Moon Combat Academy wouldn't be a big deal. However, Chen Chongqing had become the official representative of the Black Moon Combat Academy as a substitute. No matter what, they couldn't lose. The familiar stadium, the familiar ring, and the familiar cheers. When it was 9 o'clock, the entire Red Dragon Stadium seemed to come alive. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's the day that everyone has been waiting for. Today we will be facing off against the Black Moon Combat Academy and the Black Heaven Sect's affiliated university. Let us warmly welcome the contestants from both sides onto the stage. As soon as the host finished speaking, Qin Chuan led the students from the Black Moon Combat Academy and Chen Aochu led the students from the Black Heaven Sect's affiliated universities out of the resting area and slowly walked towards the arena. When they saw the 2 teams appear, the audience erupted into enthusiastic cheers. Chen Aochu smiled as he faced the cheers of his fans. He continuously waved at the people on the stage, displaying a very elegant demeanor. When he saw this scene, Qin Chuan couldn't help but curl his lips and say, if I didn't know better, I would have thought that you were here to participate in the finals. It's just a revival match. Don't you feel ashamed to be so ostentatious? Qin Chuan didn't deliberately lower his voice, so everyone nearby heard what he said. The smile on Chen Aochu's face couldn't help but stiffen. He raised his hand in embarrassment and didn't know if he should put it down or continue raising it. No matter what competition it is, you should show some appreciation to the fans who came to support you. Hong Nan promptly spoke up and helped Chen Aochu out of this awkward situation. Only then did Chen Aochu's expression become slightly better. However, he still lowered his raised hand and didn't continue to interact with his fans. On the commentary platform, today's commentators, Zhou Wei and Ah Mao, looked at the people from the Black Moon Combat Academy and the Black Heaven Sect's affiliated universities. They began to analyze today's lineup for the audience. In terms of overall realms, the Black Heaven Sect's affiliated universities are far superior to the Black Moon Combat Academy. However, as everyone knows, the strength of the Black Moon Combat Academy's contestants cannot be measured by their realms. Take the most famous contestant, Qin Chuan, for example. Although he's only in the early Foundation establishment stage, he has defeated opponents in the late Foundation establishment stage several times. It can be said that his battle record is astonishing. If the Black Heaven Sect's affiliated universities want to win today's competition, they must restrict Qin Chuan. However, it won't be easy to restrict Qin Chuan. Among the Black Heaven Sect's affiliated universities, only Chen Aochu has the strength to fight with Qin Chuan. Between Chen Aochu and Qin Chuan, whoever gets exhausted first will be at a disadvantage. Therefore, I feel that we should still observe the other contestants' performances before coming to a conclusion. Then let's wait and see. Let's see who will break through today's encirclement and successfully advance to the semi-finals. Next, I will announce the start of the revival round of the 6 Great Academies qualifiers. The first match between the Black Moon Combat Academy and the Black Heaven Sex affiliated universities has officially begun. The moment the host's voice fell, the Black Moon Combat Academy's first contestant stepped onto the stage. The first contestant was Long Xiao. When the Black Heaven Sex affiliated universities saw that the Black Moon Combat Academy's contestant was Long Xiao, they could not help but look at Chen Rue. Chen Rue nodded solemnly as he faced everyone's gaze. He then took a step forward and slowly walked towards the stage. When he saw that Chen Rue was the first contestant from the Black Heaven Sex affiliated universities, Chen Chongqing said to Qin Chuan, "Be careful of Chen Rue. He's not weak and is very talented in runes." Qin Chuan slightly raised his eyebrows and asked, "Between him and Long Xiao, who do you think has a higher chance of winning?" "I don't think there's much of a difference." Chen Chongqing muttered to himself for a moment before saying, "I wouldn't be surprised if either of them wins." "Then it looks like this match is going to be interesting." Qin Chuan gently smiled and said, "I think that Long Xiao has a higher chance of winning. After all, our Miss Long is very arrogant. If she loses her first match, it will be extremely painful for her." Do. Just as Qin Chuan and Chen Chongqing were conversing, the referee's whistle had already sounded. The match between Long Xiao and Chen Rue had instantly begun. At the start of the battle, Long Xiao had already activated her innate rune's black flame attribute. The spiritual energy surging through her body instantly turned into black flames that crazily rushed towards Chen Rue. At this moment, Chen Rue's body suddenly lit up with a deep blue light. 3 water attribute runes suddenly erupted with powerful spiritual energy fluctuations and turned into a barrier in front of Chen Rue, completely blocking the black flames that were rushing towards him. The fierce attack of the black flames, which was known to burn everything, was blocked by the water wall. Chapter 289. The rune Chen Rue used is the Essence Water rune, which has a great advantage in defense. With the combination of the 3 runes and the principle of water and fire restraining each other, it is normal for him to be able to temporarily block the attack of the black flames. I have to say that Chen Rue is very smart. He has made the most correct decision. Indeed, the black flames burn everything. Almost nothing under the same realm can resist the burning of the black flames. Chen Rue's use of the Essence Water rune to resist is indeed the best way at this stage. However, the Essence Water rune can only resist the black flames for a moment. Chen Rue's next move will be very critical. When the commentator's voice fell, a large area of the arena had been occupied by the black flames. Only a small area was still under the protection of the Essence Water rune. However, at this time, the 3 Essence Water runes were covered with cracks. Obviously, they could not hold on for long. Once the Essence Water rune collapsed and Chen Rue did not make any new moves, Chen Rue would lose without a doubt. In the arena, Long Xiao had also noticed Chen Rue's predicament, but she did not take it lightly. She wanted to crush Chen Rue with an absolute advantage and not give Chen Rue any chance to fight back. Flowing Fire Rune Array start! Long Xiao shouted. The large area of black flames on the arena suddenly converged toward the sky and condensed into a huge black fireball above Long Xiao's head. It emitted an astonishing scorching aura, as if it wanted to melt everything into nothingness. Looking at the huge fireball in the sky, the audience could not help but burst into a burst of exclamations. The flowing fire symbol array was the secret battle formation of the Long family, and its reputation was extremely resounding outside. Many people had only heard of it, but had never seen it before. Today, seeing the true appearance of the flowing fire symbol array, many people were stunned by the astonishing energy fluctuations released by the fireball. If this fireball smashed into the arena, it was afraid that the entire arena would directly evaporate. On the other side, Rune saw that the power fluctuations released by the fireball in the sky were becoming more and more astonishing. His face could not help but become dignified. He shouted in a low voice, and 2 runes appeared in front of him again. Earth level, heavy water rune. Following Rune's angry roar, a dark blue stream of water suddenly emerged in front of him. This stream of water was not much, only about 2 cubic meters in size, but it was extremely heavy, as if it weighed tens of thousands of kilograms. At the same time, under Long Zhao's control, the fireball in the sky brazenly fell toward Rune in the corner of the arena. The surging power fluctuations turned into a blazing aura at this moment, and rushed toward Rune. Seeing Long Zhao activating the flowing fire rune array, Rune no longer hesitated. A solemn face, he manipulated the heavy water in front of him to charge toward the falling fireball. The collision of water and fire and exploded. A large amount of water burst out. A large amount of water and instantly covered the arena, turned into a vast expanse of white. It's the essence water rune array. It is to say, it's of the is to say, to activate to the rune to activate twos. Is said Rue's array can be said to activate the array. Be said to activate to the said the array. To activate it Rune to activate the array. It's a pity that Rune is not a rune array master. If he can inscribe the heavy water rune array with the heavy water rune as the core, he may be able to block the impact of the flowing fire rune array. It's really a pity. Although the heavy water rune also has a strong defensive ability, the flowing fire rune array's offensive ability is stronger and more ferocious. Although Rune has 2 heavy water runes, it still seems to be too weak. Although we can't see the situation in the arena clearly, I can feel that the flowing fire rune array is still strong, but the aura of the heavy water rune is gradually weakening. It seems that Rune may lose. The commentator's words could be said to be the voice of many people. No matter from the point of view of the strength of both sides, or from the current situation, Rune was in an absolute disadvantage. At this time, Long Zhao occupied a great advantage, and it could be said that the victory was almost in her grasp. If Long Zhao wins this match, the later situation will become very advantageous to us. Lu Zi looked in the direction of the arena with excited eyes, and said to Qinchuan, "Maybe we can win the match without you appearing today. Don't be too careless." Qinchuan pursed his lips and said, "Look at the affiliated University of Mysterious Sky Sect, they don't look worried at all." Hearing Qinchuan's words, Lu Zi subconsciously turned her head to look at the affiliated University of Mysterious Sky Sect. Sure enough, as Qinchuan said, Chen Aochu and the others looked calm and didn't look worried at all. Long Zhao is in trouble. Bai Yu, who was silent, suddenly said, Rune's counterattack is coming. The moment Bai Yu's voice fell, the water vapor in the arena suddenly rolled violently. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into fist-sized dark blue water droplets, suspended in the air, and trapped Long Zhao in the center. Seeing this scene, Long Zhao couldn't help but show a touch of surprise on her face. At the same time, a water ball opposite Long Zhao suddenly disappeared, and it was replaced by Rune's figure. Rumble! The fireball smashed into the arena, and an earth-shattering roar broke out. Rune's back was facing the monstrous flames, and he didn't have any intention of looking back. His eyes were locked on Long Zhao, and he said in a deep voice, "You are already under my siege. As long as I have a thought, these heavy water balls can wrap you up in the blink of an eye. You won't be able to breathe, and you will suffocate to death." Long Zhao sneered, "Are you persuading me to surrender? What else?" Rune smiled faintly, After all, you are Long Zhao's daughter. Naturally, I can't let you lose too badly. I admit that I have somewhat underestimated you, but do you think you will win? Long Zhao looked at Chen Rui with disdain. You are telling me this to buy time for you to regain control of these heavy water balls. Hearing Long Zhao's words, Chen Rui's face couldn't help but change slightly. I am also buying time by talking nonsense with you. Long Zhao shouted in a low voice. A single spark can start a prairie fire. As Long Zhao's shout fell, the remnants of the black flames behind Chen Rui suddenly became active, condensed together, and turned into a pitch-black fire phoenix, and pounced on Chen Rui with a screech. Aware of the change behind him, Chen Rui couldn't continue to wait. He could only control the few heavy water balls to gather behind him in an attempt to resist the fire phoenix's attack. At this moment, Long Zhao's figure moved. She crossed the distance of dozens of meters in the blink of an eye, closed in on Chen Rui, and threw a punch which landed on Chen Rui's chest. The intense pain from his chest made Chen Rui's eyes widen. He looked at Long Zhao in disbelief, as if he was surprised that Long Zhao would fight him in close combat. Chapter 290. No one would have thought that a talisman formation master, a cultivator who was proficient in controlling runes, would end up fighting in close quarters. Seeing Chen Rui being suppressed by Long Zhao in the arena, Qin Chuan couldn't help but shake his head and say, Chen Rui missed the best opportunity to attack. What a pity. What do you mean? Lu Zi looked at Qin Chuan curiously with a confused expression. At that time, the arena was completely shrouded in water vapor. Chen Rui shouldn't have condensed the water vapor into heavy water balls. Instead, he should have used the water vapor as a cover to attack Long Zhao with ordinary water attribute method. Although this wouldn't have caused too much damage to Long Zhao, it would have definitely disrupted Long Zhao's rhythm and affected his subsequent performance. At that time, he would have quietly condensed heavy water balls. He wouldn't have needed too many, just a few would have been enough to easily defeat Long Zhao. Boss is right. Chen Rui seemed to have made the most prudent decision to surround Long Zhao with a large number of heavy water balls, but in fact, he was also tying his own hands and feet, giving Long Zhao an opportunity to take advantage of. Compared to Qin Chuan, Chen Chongqing undoubtedly understood Chen Rui better. Chen Rui was an overly cautious person. He only wanted to use the most powerful method to take down Long Zhao, but if Long Zhao didn't cooperate, then Chen Rui would become a paper tiger that only looked frightening. Just as everyone was discussing spiritedly, the situation in the arena had already become one-sided. Long Zhao had completely occupied the upper hand and firmly suppressed Chen Rui. At this time, Chen Rui only had the strength to resist, and it was very difficult for him to pose a threat to Long Zhao. It could be said that Long Zhao already had victory in his hands. Seeing this scene in the arena, the commentator was also somewhat emotional. He said in a clear voice, In my opinion, whether it is the array glyphs, runes, or crystal suits, they are all auxiliary things. For a cultivator, the most important thing is still the body. Only when the body is strong enough can a cultivator be called a true expert. Take the current situation for example. Long Zhao is younger than Chen Rui, and his cultivation level is lower than Chen Rui's. Originally, when they were fighting with talisman arrays and runes, the two of them were evenly matched, but when the battle changed to close quarters combat, Chen Rui was completely suppressed by Long Zhao. I agree with you very much. Nowadays, many people only pay attention to the inscription of glyphs and the meditation of glyphs, but they neglect the tempering of the body. You must know that on the battlefield, when we face the demon clan, if we are unable to kill the demon clan from a distance, then we will have to engage in close combat with the demon clan. If the strength of the body is not enough, then the moment the demon clan gets close to us, we will be torn to pieces. I don't think I need to tell you how powerful the physical body of the demon race is. If you have been to the battlefield, you will definitely find that most of the people in the army walk the path of body refinement. Because if you don't train your body, when facing the demon clan's charge, you may be smashed into meat paste in the first round. The soldiers who can really survive on the battlefield all have extremely strong bodies. Therefore, I am here to call on everyone not to neglect the tempering of the body. To forge iron, you need to have a strong body. Only a strong body is truly strong. Hearing the commentator's words, many spectators who were watching the match looked at the scene in the arena and fell into deep thought. Originally, the battle between Long Xiao and Chen Rue was very stalemate, and it could be said that it was difficult to determine the winner. However, when the hand-to-hand combat began, Chen Rue's performance was extremely poor. He had no power to fight back in the face of Long Xiao's attack. There was only one reason for this situation, and that was that Long Xiao's body was stronger than Chen Rue's. In the case where the rune arrays and runes had lost their effect, whoever had a stronger body would occupy the dominant position in the battle. In today's technologically advanced era, most cultivators graduated from school. They learned rune meditation, rune array inscription, and all kinds of knowledge in school, but they never learned how to strengthen the body. Although the school's training room also had special venues for tempering the body, there were very few people who really used these venues because everyone only paid attention to cultural classes and ignored physical education classes. This also caused most of the cultivators to have strong spiritual power and control many runes or rune arrays, but their bodies were extremely weak. They were only suitable for long-range combat. If they encountered a close combat situation, they basically had no chance of winning. Of course, most of the people who would be in such a situation were white-collar cultivators who lived in modern cities. Their jobs and daily lives rarely involved actual combat. As for those soldiers who often fought with the demon race on the front line, their bodies were naturally extremely strong. Just as everyone was lost in thought, the battle in the arena finally came to an end. Chen Rue was no match for Long Xiao. He was knocked to the ground by Long Xiao's punch and fainted on the spot. After winning the first battle, Long Xiao was not satisfied, because this was completely different from the situation she had imagined where she would crush Chen Rue and win. Because the arena needed to be repaired, the competition was suspended, and Long Xiao was able to walk down the arena. She looked at the slightly quiet audience and said with a sad face, "Didn't I just win a little slowly? Is there no cheering in the audience?" Looking at the aggrieved expression on Long Xiao's face, Lu Zi chuckled and said, "You misunderstood. They are just thinking about a problem." Hearing this, Long Xiao asked curiously, "What problem?" "It's about tempering the body." Qin Chuan looked at Long Xiao with subtle eyes and said, "This is the first time I know that your body is so strong." Long Xiao said with a puzzled face, "What's there to ponder about? Regardless of whether we are men or women in the Long family, we start tempering our bodies from a young age. Before I came into contact with cultivation methods, I already started tempering my body. Isn't tempering the body something that every cultivator should do?" Hearing Long Xiao's words, Qin Chuan could not help but sigh and say, "No wonder the Long family can stand tall in the Federation for thousands of years. In my opinion, the Mystic Sky sect is slightly inferior to your Long family." The Mystic Sky sect was also a super sect that had been entrenched in the Star Dragon Federation for thousands of years. However, the Mystic Sky sect focused on the meditation of runes and ignored the tempering of the body. It could be said that they were neglecting the essentials and focusing on the trifles. No wonder they had been going downhill all these years and were getting worse with each generation. Hearing Qin Chuan's evaluation of the Mystic Sky sect, Chen Chongqing's heart was a little complicated. He was also a member of the Mystic Sky sect and knew the Mystic Sky sect very well. As far as he knew, among the thousands of cultivators in the Mystic Sky sect, less than 1 in 10 had achieved anything in tempering their body. If the Mystic Sky sect did not make changes, it might be difficult for the Mystic Sky sect to maintain its current status in a few years. Chapter 291. When Chen Rue was defeated, everyone from the Xian sect's affiliated university had a bad look on their faces. No one had expected Chen Rue to make such a stupid move and lose in the end. We shouldn't have put too much hope in Chen Rue. After all, his opponent is the Long family's first daughter. She is someone who is on par with Qin Haoshuan and Yi Qingning. When Hong Nan saw everyone's gloomy faces, she said, "Although Chen Rue lost, Long Zhao's condition is not much better. Why don't I fight in the next round?" Hearing Hong Nan's initiative, Chen Aochu's face became a little better. He nodded gently and said, "Then you will fight in the next round. You must win." On the other side, at this time, the repair work of the arena was already nearing completion. Just as Long Xiao was about to go up the stage again, Qin Chuan stopped Long Xiao and said to Long Xiao, "The next battle, let LVZ come up." Long Xiao looked at Qin Chuan with some surprise, and then looked at Lu Zi, who was also very surprised. Then she asked Qin Chuan, "Why do you want Lu Zi to fight? Don't you trust me?" "No, I have other plans," Qin Chuan said to Long Xiao seriously. "This is a very important decision. I can't tell you now, but you will know later." Although Long Xiao was already puzzled, she still chose to trust Qin Chuan. She did not enter the arena and gave the opportunity to Lu Zi. "Qin Chuan, what are you trying to do?" Lu Zi was a little confused. Long Xiao clearly still had the strength to fight, but Qin Chuan stopped Long Xiao from entering the arena. This was completely a waste of combat power. "Listen to me. Either you win or draw. Do your best." Qin Chuan smiled at Lu Zi and said, "Just fight to the best of your ability. There's no need to think too much." When the people standing beside Qin Chuan heard Qin Chuan's words, they were extremely puzzled. They didn't understand why Qin Chuan was doing this. What was it that couldn't be made clear now? Why did they have to wait until later to reveal it, making it so mysterious? Lu Zi did not ask any more questions and directly walked towards the stage. Everyone was shocked when they saw that the Black Moon Combat Academy's representative was not Long Xiao, but rather Lu Zi. It's very strange. In the previous battle, Long Xiao might have used up some of his strength, but he definitely still has the strength to fight. If he's lucky, he might even be able to defeat another opponent. Why didn't the Black Moon Combat Academy allow Long Xiao to continue fighting on stage? Why did they choose to replace him? This is a serious waste of his battle strength. I feel that there are only two possibilities. Either Long Xiao is already injured, but he's not showing it, or the Black Moon Combat Academy is confident in their victory and is confident that they can defeat the Black Moon Combat Academy's affiliated university without going all out. They're preparing to give everyone a chance to fight on stage and give everyone a chance to practice in order to prepare for the semifinals. Other than that, I can't think of any other reason. Then let's see what the Black Moon Combat Academy is trying to do. When the audience heard the commentator's words, they all felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. At such a crucial moment like the revival round, everyone would want to split a person into two. However, the Black Moon Combat Academy was different. Long Xiao looked like he was still alive and kicking, but they didn't allow him to fight on stage. This was simply looking down on the Black Moon Combat Academy's students. When Chen Aochu and the rest saw that it was LVZ who had stepped onto the stage, they were stunned for a moment. When they heard the commentator's words, their faces instantly turned gloomy. Not only had the Black Moon Combat Academy not gone all out against them, they had even wanted to use them to train their troop. This was simply looking down on them. "Hong Nan, go." Chen Aochu's face was cold as he said to Hong Nan, "Kill her for me. I'll take responsibility if anything happens. I'll teach her a lesson," Hong Nan said as she walked towards the stage. Naturally, it was impossible for her to kill Lu Zi, but it wouldn't be a problem for her to cripple Lu Zi. At this moment, Lu Zi stood on the stage and faced Hong Nan's furious gaze. She couldn't help but glare at Qin Chuan with hidden bitterness. It was all his fault. Now, the Black Moon Combat Academy students were pouring their anger onto her. If she wasn't able to defeat her opponent, her fate would be extremely miserable. "You people from the Black Moon Combat Academy are really arrogant," Hong Nan said to Lu Zi with a cold expression the moment she stepped onto the stage. "If you don't want to be beaten too badly, it's best that you admit defeat now." Lu Zi looked at Hong Nan with a helpless expression. She spread out her hands and said, "If I said that I was forced to go on stage, would you believe me?" Black Moon Combat Academy vs. Black Moon Combat Academy. Second match, Lu Zi vs. Hong Nan. Begin. Toot toot toot. The moment the whistle sounded, Hong Nan immediately took out a talisman brush and an array disc. She actually began to inscribe a talisman array. Lu Zi was a little surprised when she saw this. She had looked up Hong Nan's information before, but she never knew that Hong Nan was also a talisman array master. However, seeing that Hong Nan was using both a talisman brush and a talisman array at the same time, it seemed that she wasn't very skilled in the Tao of talisman arrays. However, if Hong Nan wasn't skilled in the Tao of talisman arrays, then why was she inscribing a talisman array at the beginning of the match? Lu Zi was puzzled, but this didn't stop her from quickly inscribing a talisman array. She used the shadow body talisman array to confuse Hong Nan and hide her body. While Lu Zi hid in the dark and focused all of her attention on inscribing a new talisman array, Hong Nan had finally finished inscribing her own talisman array. Hong Nan smiled coldly as she looked at the dozens of shadows running around the stage. She suddenly activated the array disc in her hand and shouted, "Lava Talisman Array, activate!" As Hong Nan's voice fell, the array disc, which was emitting a strong scarlet light, suddenly exploded with an extremely hot aura. It almost instantly enveloped the entire stage and turned the stage a dark red, as if lava was surging within it. The talisman array that Hong Nan is using is actually an extremely rare talisman array that can change the shape of the terrain. I've heard of this lava talisman array before. It's said that it can turn the space within a certain range into a lava floor. It's definitely the best place for fire attribute cultivators to fight, and Hong Nan's innate talisman is of the fire attribute. Look, when the stage turns into a lava floor, Lu Zi's shadows begin to dissipate into mist. Lu Zi's body has been exposed. She's on the left side of the stage. When the commentator's voice rang out, everyone in the audience had already seen Lu Zi. At this moment, Lu Zi was standing on the left side of the stage, inscribing a talisman array. Her face was full of astonishment. Obviously, she didn't expect that Hong Nan's talisman array could change the shape of the terrain. Fire Phoenix burns the plains. Hong Nan's angry roar rang out. On the lava floor, a huge fire phoenix soared into the sky, emitting a blazing heat. It brazenly charged towards Lu Zi. Chapter 292. Seeing the fire phoenix pouncing towards her, LVZ had no choice but to stop inscribing the glyph and dodge to the side. The scalding ground and the flowing lava made the space where LVZ could dodge extremely fragmented, making it extremely inconvenient for her to move. On the other hand, Hong Nan was like a fish in water. She easily used her spirit force to control the ground and continuously attacked Lu Zi. In just a short moment, Lu Zi had been forced into a desperate situation and was surrounded by a sea of fire. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan couldn't help but frown slightly with a grave expression. He had underestimated Hong Nan. He didn't expect Hong Nan to have such a rare glyph array that could change the terrain. Hong Nan's talent Rune is of the fire attribute. When fighting on the lava ground, her strength will increase by at least 30%. On the other hand, Lu Zi's strength will decrease by at least 30%. If this goes on, Lu Zi will be at an absolute disadvantage against Hong Nan. In addition, Lu Zi is an illusion array master. Her direct combat ability is limited, and she won't be able to defeat Hong Nan in a short time. She has almost no chance of winning this battle. As a cultivator with a talent rune of the fire attribute, Long Xiao understood Hong Nan's advantage very well. If she was on the stage, Hong Nan would definitely not dare to inscribe the lava glyph array because her combat ability on the lava ground was definitely stronger than Hong Nan's. Do you know how to use this glyph array to change the terrain? Qin Chuan looked at Long Xiao and asked in a low voice, if you were Lu Zi, how would you deal with it? Either admit defeat or think of a way to change the situation. Long Xiao explained to Qin Chuan, although this lava glyph array can change the terrain, it is only temporary. It won't turn the stage into a lava ground forever. As long as the array disk is broken, the lava ground will naturally disappear. Upon hearing Long Xiao's words, Qin Chuan subconsciously looked towards the arena. The formation plate that could change the terrain was floating in front of Hong Nan. It was at least a few dozen meters away from Lu Zi. It was almost impossible for Lu Zi to destroy the formation plate. This was because Hong Nan had at least 100 ways to defeat her. In other words, the only option left for Lu Zi was to admit defeat. When he thought of this, Qin Chuan pursed his lips and said, I underestimated Hong Nan. I'm sorry. There's no need to say this, because none of us knew that Hong Nan actually had such a killing weapon. She had never used this lava talisman matrix before. Long Xiao looked at Hong Nan with a subtle expression and said, she carefully prepared this killing move, and it will only be effective against Lu Zi. Just as everyone was talking, a new change occurred in the arena. Hong Nan controlled all the fire spiritual energy on the lava ground and surrounded Lu Zi. It was like a furnace, imprisoning Lu Zi and roasting Lu Zi at a high temperature. If Lu Zi stayed in there for too long, an accident might happen. Hong Nan besieged Lu Zi but did not attack. Firstly, it was to save energy for the next battle. Secondly, it was to demonstrate to Qin Chuan and the others that she wanted to force Qin Chuan to admit defeat on behalf of Lu Zi. She wanted to humiliate Qin Chuan. At this moment, the commentator also saw Lu Zi's predicament and sighed. Now, Lu Zi is completely under Hong Nan's control. As long as Hong Nan wants to, she can defeat Lu Zi at any time. The reason why she besieged Lu Zi and did not attack is to force Qin Chuan to admit defeat on behalf of Lu Zi. Previously, Qin Chuan, as the captain, changed the team at the last minute, which showed contempt for the Black Sky Sex-affiliated university. Now, Hong Nan wants to force Qin Chuan to admit defeat on behalf of his team. This is clearly a slap in the face for Qin Chuan. She wants Qin Chuan to admit his mistake. This is a big blow to Qin Chuan's prestige. Yes, now we have to see what choice Qin Chuan will make. Will he grit his teeth and refuse to admit defeat in order to maintain his prestige and watch Lu Zi get tortured by Hong Nan? Or will he put down his false reputation and admit defeat on behalf of Lu Zi? As the commentator finished speaking, the audience could not help but look at Qin Chuan, who was standing below the arena. If the commentator had not explained, they would not have thought that the confrontation in the arena had such a deep meaning. At this moment, they were very curious about what choice Qin Chuan would make. What do you think? Long Xiao turned to look at Qin Chuan. If it were her, she would choose to admit defeat in order to protect Lu Zi. Qin Chuan looked at the arena with a deep gaze. He did not answer Long Xiao immediately because he wanted to wait a little longer. Perhaps Lu Zi could make a comeback in this hopeless situation. Although the chances of a comeback were very small, he was willing to believe in Lu Zi for once. When he saw Qin Chuan remaining silent, Chen Chongqing's expression couldn't help but become somewhat subtle. He didn't understand what Qin Chuan was waiting for. Could it be that he had to admit defeat at the moment Hong Nan truly attacked LVZ? In the arena, Hong Nan glanced at the gloomy Qin Chuan and sneered, Since you're not willing to admit defeat, then let me force you to speak. Hong Nan shouted in a low voice. The spiritual energy in her body surged and condensed in front of her. It turned into a red fireball that emitted a heart-palpitating energy fluctuation. Seeing this, the audience understood that Hong Nan was going to launch her final attack on Lu Zi. Flying flame. Under Hong Nan's control, the huge fireball flew toward the trapped Lu Zi. Suddenly, a pitch-black flash appeared in the red fireball and pierced through the fireball like a ghost. Before Hong Nan could react, it pierced the array disc. Crack. When the array disc was attacked, it immediately let out a weak shattering sound. The lava floor of the arena suddenly fluctuated and showed signs of dissipating. Seeing this, Hong Nan's expression suddenly turned ugly. What made her even more frightened was that the fireball that was supposed to fly toward Lu Zi had stopped in the middle of the arena. It violently fluctuated and then suddenly exploded. Rumble! The crimson color completely enveloped the ring, illuminating the entire stadium with a fiery red color. Everyone present was stunned. What on earth had happened just now? Whoosh! The referee's figure quickly rushed into the arena and then quickly reappeared. He was carrying a charred figure in each hand. He expressionlessly said to the audience, Black Moon Combat Academy's Lu Zi and Black Heaven Sec's affiliated universities Hong Nan have both fainted. This match is a draw. Hearing the referee's words, the audience suddenly burst into cries of surprise. Who would have thought that Hong Nan would not be able to defeat Lu Zi even when she was sure of her victory? Instead, Lu Zi had found an opportunity to forcefully turn the situation into a draw. However, how had Lu Zi managed to turn the situation around when she was at an absolute disadvantage? Chapter 293. When the fire on the arena dissipated, the arena had become pitch black, and nothing could be seen. At this moment, the crystal screen above the arena suddenly began to replay the previous battle, and it was even playing in slow motion. At this moment, everyone could clearly see how Lu Zi had broken through the situation. The thing that had pierced through flying flame and shattered the array disc was actually a talisman brush. Under the slow motion, a pitch-black talisman brush, with the support of an enormous force, had pierced through the wall of fire and flying flame before accurately hitting the array disc that was floating in front of Hong Nan. This caused all of Hong Nan's preparations to become useless. At the same time, it also caused flying flame to become chaotic, causing it to explode. The situation that had been favorable to Hong Nan had instantly turned into a draw. Seeing the slow-motion replay on the crystal screen, the commentator on the commentary platform said to everyone, If I'm not wrong, the body of this talisman brush should be made from black wood. Black wood is extremely hard, and is impervious to fire and water. It has an excellent ability to channel spiritual energy and is often used to make high-end talisman brushes. Only black wood can fly at such high speeds without disintegrating or being affected by the flames, and then shatter the array disc. That's right. I just checked Lu Zi's previous battle recordings. She's always been using this talisman brush made from black wood. At that crucial moment, Lu Zi should have compressed all of her spiritual energy and used it to launch the talisman brush. If she hadn't succeeded, she might have lost her life to flying flame. I have to say that every participant from the Black Moon Combat Academy is a madman. Hearing the commentator's words, the audience felt the same way. If she wasn't a madman, who would make such a desperate move in a situation where she could lose her life at any time? Although the battle had ended in a draw, the expressions on the faces of the Black Moon Combat Academy students were not good. Qin Chuan looked in the direction of the infirmary with a complicated expression. He said to everyone, Lu Zi was risking her life for me just now. If she had failed, she might have died. Qin Chuan knew Lu Zi very well. If he hadn't told Lu Zi that it was either a draw or a win, Lu Zi wouldn't have chosen to risk her life in that desperate situation. Fortunately, nothing happened to Lu Zi. If something happened to Lu Zi, he wouldn't be able to live in peace for the rest of his life. There's no need for you to blame yourself. Long Xiao glanced at Qin Chuan and asked, "Who do you plan to send out next?" "Bai Yu." Qin Chuan looked at Bai Yu and said, "You fight the next battle." Bai Yu nodded and didn't say anything. No matter who her next opponent was, she would definitely win. On the other side, the faces of the students from the Black Heaven sex-affiliated universities were also very ugly. They had clearly won 2 consecutive battles, but they had lost one and tied the other. This result was hard for them to accept. We clearly could have won the battle. Why did we lose? Chen Aochu gloomily looked in the direction of the Black Moon Combat Academy student. His heart was filled with hatred. They had lost the battle when they had the advantage, so it would have been better to have been crushed. Aochu, don't be impatient. Let me fight the next battle. I'll definitely win for you. Hong Nuan took a step forward and softly comforted the angry Chen Aochu. She then looked at Li Sairu with a threatening gaze, her eyes filled with disgust and disdain for Li Sairu. However, Li Sairu didn't care about this at all. The repairs to the arena had been completed, and the competition continued. Hong Nuan didn't wait for the Black Moon Combat Academy students to step onto the stage. She took the lead and walked towards the arena. She looked at the Black Moon Combat Academy students with an arrogant expression and said, "Who's next? Come up quickly." Faced with Hong Nuan's provocation, Bai Yu remained silent. She slowly walked onto the stage and stood in front of Hong Nuan. When the crowd saw that the Black Moon Combat Academy's representative was Bai Yu, they were all curious about her. This was because they had never seen her fight before. During the official competition, Bai Yu had admitted defeat without fighting Qin Haoshuan because of Qin Chuan. Therefore, the crowd didn't know much about Bai Yu's strength. Bai Yu can be said to be a very mysterious contestant. She's the only one in the Black Moon Combat Academy who hasn't fought on stage before. However, from what I know, Bai Yu's popularity among the Black Moon Combat Academy's new students is very high. She's not below Qin Chuan and is known as the #1 new student. I've also heard of what you just said. If Bai Yu is truly the #1 new student of the Black Moon Combat Academy, then we can infer from Qin Chuan's performance that Bai Yu's strength must be extremely strong. Furthermore, Bai Yu is only 17 years old this year and is the youngest contestant in the competition. Her future is limitless. After hearing the commentator's introduction of Bai Yu, the audience was extremely shocked. They never thought that such a cold girl like Bai Yu would actually be the publicly recognized #1 new student of the Black Moon Combat Academy. She was on the same level as Qin Chuan. More importantly, Bai Yu was only 17 years old. It had to be known that other than Bai Yu, the youngest contestant in the official competition was already 19 years old. While the audience was discussing Bai Yu, Hong Nuan, who was on stage, coldly smiled at Bai Yu and said, "If you don't want to die, you'd better admit defeat now. Otherwise, I won't go easy on you just because you're young." Faced with Hong Nuan's kind persuasion, Bai Yu remained expressionless and indifferent. She had no desire to speak to Hong Nuan, and this disregard made Hong Nuan very unhappy. She decided that the moment the whistle sounded, she would use her secret technique and defeat Bai Yu. The 6 Great Academies Qualifier Tournaments Revival Stage. Black Moon Combat Academies, Bai Yu vs. Black Heaven Affiliated Universities, Hong Nuan. The match will now begin. Toot toot toot. The moment the whistle sounded, the spiritual power in Hong Nuan's body surged and instantly turned into a long red whip in her hand. She waved the long whip and lashed it fiercely on the ground, instantly smashing a tile into pieces. "Little girl, I'm coming." Bai Yu indifferently looked at Hong Nuan and indifferently said, "What a showy show." As Bai Yu's voice fell, Hong Nuan, who was about to attack, instantly flushed red. Then, a trace of fear appeared in her eyes. Hong Nuan opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of dark red blood. The aura in her body suddenly became chaotic and her eyes rolled back. Of course, she fainted. Seeing that Hong Nuan had fainted, the noisy scene suddenly quieted down. Everyone looked at the unconscious Hong Nuan on the stage with strange expressions. What was going on? Your opponent hasn't even used her full strength and you've already fallen? Chapter 294. It wasn't just the audience that was dumbfounded. Even the commentator, who usually had excellent eyesight and rich experience, was dumbfounded. After a long period of silence, the referee finished checking on Hong Nuan's condition and announced to the crowd, Hong Nuan from the Black Moon Combat Academy is unconscious. Bai Yu from the Black Moon Combat Academy wins this match. When the referee's voice fell, the crowd burst into an uproar. Who would have thought that Bai Yu's first match would end in such a strange way? This made those who wanted to see what Bai Yu was capable of feel a little stunned. Bai Yu had won while standing in the same spot. How could they see anything from this? I think that Hong Nuan's sudden loss of consciousness wasn't due to her, but rather because she was attacked by Bai Yu without us knowing. Everyone can look at the slow-motion replay on the crystal screen. Before Hong Nuan fainted, there was a trace of fear on her face. She must have sensed something, which caused her expression to change. Bai Yu, on the other hand, wasn't surprised by Hong Nuan's sudden loss of consciousness. She was extremely calm, which means that Bai Yu already knew that Hong Nuan would be unconscious. Bai Yu is a student of the Black Moon Combat Academy. Perhaps Hong Nuan was attacked by her spiritual force, which caused her to lose consciousness. However, if Bai Yu had used her spiritual force, we should have sensed it, but I didn't sense anything. It's indeed very strange, very strange. At least, I've never seen such a strange match. Hearing the commentator's words, the audience couldn't help but be even more shocked. They never thought that even the commentator wouldn't be able to understand how Bai Yu had defeated Hong Nuan. Bai Yu was only at the early foundation establishment stage, while the commentator was at the mid-golden core stage. There was an entire realm between them. Even with the commentator's eyesight, he couldn't see how Bai Yu had defeated Hong Nuan. This wasn't because the commentator was incompetent, but because Bai Yu was too mysterious and too strange. After the referee announced the result of the match, Bai Yu calmly turned around and walked down the stage. Qin Chuan looked at Bai Yu's calm expression and helplessly said, I told you to be more low-key. Why are you still so high-profile? Bai Yu glanced at Qin Chuan and said, I was already very low-key. She was too weak. The corner of Qin Chuan's mouth twitched. He didn't know what to say, but the end result was good. They won another match. Let's have Bai Yu fight in the next round. Long Xiao glanced at Qin Chuan and said, Let Bai Yu get rid of the remaining 2 people from the Black Sky Sex-affiliated university. We can go back to rest and prepare for the semifinals. Everyone agreed with Long Xiao's suggestion. However, Qin Chuan shook his head and said, No, I'll go next. Everyone was slightly surprised when they heard Qin Chuan say that he wanted to step onto the stage himself, but they didn't pay too much attention to it. After all, whether it was Qin Chuan or Bai Yu who stepped onto the stage, she would definitely be able to defeat her opponent. It wouldn't affect the outcome. Bai Yu looked deeply at Qin Chuan and asked, Are you protecting me? Qin Chuan stared blankly for a moment before smiling at Bai Yu. You're wrong. I'm not protecting you. I'm just doing something more important. While Qin Chuan's group was chatting casually, Chen Aochu from the Black Sky Sex-affiliated university had a gloomy expression on his face. He hadn't expected that Hong Nuan, who had confidently promised to defeat her opponent, would be instantly defeated by her opponent in an extremely strange manner. This Bai Yu is too strange. She's even stranger than Qin Chuan. Chen Aochu felt that he couldn't understand these people from the Black Moon Combat Academy. They were clearly just a bunch of immature brats, so why were they all so terrifying? Let me go next. Li Siru took a step forward and said indifferently, maybe I'll be able to probe her a little. Chen Aochu didn't reject Li Siru's suggestion. If he went up the stage and directly faced Bai Yu, then he wouldn't have any chance of winning. Letting Li Siru go up the stage and continue probing Bai Yu was the best and most suitable choice for them. However, just as Chen Aochu was about to warn Li Siru about something, the words that were about to come out of his mouth were suddenly stuck in his throat. As they watched Qin Chuan slowly walk up the stage, Chen Aochu was stunned. Li Siru was also stunned. The entire audience was stunned. The Black Moon Combat Academy had changed their members again? In the 4 matches, the Black Moon Combat Academy had changed their members 4 times in a row. Furthermore, aside from Lu Zi's match, the rest of the Black Moon Combat Academy's members were all in good condition. The Black Moon Combat Academy has changed their members again. This time, it's our old acquaintance, Qin Chuan. I think that this should be the last time the Black Moon Combat Academy will change their members. Qin Chuan will probably fight until the end. When the commentator saw Qin Chuan walk up the stage, he couldn't help but feel excited. It could be said that he had a rather deep understanding of Qin Chuan. Now that the Black Heaven Sex-affiliated universities had suffered consecutive defeats, they no longer had the will to fight. Qin Chuan should be able to easily win this match. In the past matches, Qin Chuan has never disappointed us every time he went on stage. Now, let's see if Qin Chuan will bring us even more surprises in today's match. Li Siru slowly walked up the stage under everyone's gazes. She had originally thought that she would be facing Bai Yu and was prepared to lose. She never thought that her opponent would be Qin Chuan. However, this didn't affect her as she didn't think that she could defeat Qin Chuan. She would still lose in the end. However, compared to losing to Bai Yu in a strange way, Li Siru was more willing to face Qin Chuan, who had a relatively normal fighting style. At the very least, she wouldn't lose without knowing why. Qin Chuan looked at Li Siru, who was standing in front of him, and slightly pursed his lips. I'm friends with Chen Chongqing, very good friends. I've heard about the matters between you and him. Li Siru was stunned when she heard this. She never thought that Qin Chuan would suddenly say such words to her on the stage. Qin Chuan didn't care about the change in Li Siru's expression as he continued in a serious manner. Today, I want to give Chen Chongqing a gift, a complete transformation and liberation. What exactly do you want to do? Li Siru looked at Qin Chuan with a puzzled expression. She didn't understand what Qin Chuan was saying. Admit defeat, Qin Chuan seriously suggested to Li Siru. If you admit defeat, I will also leave the stage and won't go up again. We'll leave the final match to Chen Aochu and Chen Chongqing. What do you think? When she heard Qin Chuan's words, Li Siru couldn't help but widen her eyes. At this moment, she finally understood that the Black Moon Combat Academy's constant substitutions weren't for training, but to pave the way for Chen Chongqing's final match against Chen Aochu. Chapter 295. Do you know what you are talking about? Li Siru looked at Qin Chuan in shock. She did not expect that Qin Chuan would give up the victory that was within his grasp and hand over the final decision to Chen Chongqing. Haven't I made myself clear enough? Qin Chuan smiled slightly and said, Chongqing is my friend and my brother. I believe that he will not let me down. Do you know that Chen Chongqing and Chen Aochu have never won against him since they were young? Li Siru looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, You are digging your own grave. Digging my own grave? Not necessarily. Qin Chuan said very calmly, In the past, Chongqing would lose to Chen Aochu, but it may not be so now. Don't you trust Chen Chongqing that much and think that Chen Chongqing will definitely lose? Li Siru was speechless. Did she really not trust Chen Chongqing and think that Chen Chongqing would definitely lose? No, of course not. You must be crazy. Li Siru felt that Qin Chuan was really crazy. At such a critical moment, he handed the heavy responsibility to Chen Chongqing. Chen Chongqing was under too much pressure. Li Sairu was not the only one who felt that Qin Chuan was crazy. Everyone who heard the conversation between Qin Chuan and Li Sairu felt that Qin Chuan must be crazy. Letting Chen Chongqing fight against Chen Aochu? Wasn't it obvious that they were going to hand over the victory to the affiliated university of the Xiantian sect? Below the ring, Chen Chongqing looked at Qin Chuan with astonishment. He did not expect that Qin Chuan kept asking for substitutions so that he could fight against Chen Aochu at the end. Long Xiao was also stunned by Qin Chuan's bold behavior. She looked at Chen Chongqing with astonishment and asked, "Have you really never won against Chen Aochu since you were young?" "No." Chen Chongqing answered honestly, "Whether it's a head-on battle or a sneak attack, I have never won." Long Xiao could not help but roll her eyes when she heard Chen Chongqing's words. "Since you've never won, why is Qin Chuan so confident in you?" "How would I know?" Chen Chongqing smiled bitterly and said to Long Xiao, "I really hope that boss is lying. I don't want to fight Chen Aochu at all. Not at all." Chen Chongqing didn't want to fight with Chen Aochu. Firstly, he couldn't beat Chen Aochu. Secondly, his grandfather had told him that if he didn't have to fight, he should try his best not to fight. If he had to fight, he definitely couldn't win. Once he won, it would bring about a fatal disaster. While Chen Chongqing was worrying about these things, Chen Aochu on the other side almost laughed out loud. He did not expect that Qin Chuan kept substituting people so that he could fight Chen Chongqing at the end. He might not have any chance of winning against Qin Chuan and Bai Yu, but against Chen Chongqing, there was no reason for him to lose. It was absolutely impossible for him to lose. Sairu, admit defeat. At this time, Chen Aochu took the initiative to find the referee and admitted defeat on behalf of Li Sairu as the team leader. He could not wait to defeat Chen Chongqing in front of everyone and lead the Black Sky Sect's affiliated university to successfully fight their way out of the encirclement and enter the semi-finals. Chen Aochu was not worried that Qin Chuan would lie to him. This was because Qin Chuan's words were clearly heard by all the spectators. If Qin Chuan really dared to lie to him, then Chen Aochu could guarantee that Qin Chuan's reputation would be tarnished and he would no longer have any credibility in the future. As the team leader, if Chen Aochu admitted defeat on behalf of Li Sairu, then Li Sairu would definitely be judged as having lost and would no longer be able to participate in the next match. According to the agreement, Qin Chuan would also voluntarily forfeit and no longer participate in the next match. This way, only Chen Chongqing would be left on the Black Moon Combat Academy's side. To Chen Aochu, using Li Sairu to replace Qin Chuan and having him face Chen Chongqing was definitely a good deal. On the stage, Li Sairu received the referee's notification. She looked at Qin Chuan with a complicated expression and asked, "Are you really going to do this?" Qin Chuan did not reply to Li Sairu. He only smiled faintly before turning around and walking down the stage. Seeing Qin Chuan walk down the stage, Chen Chongqing hurriedly went up to him and said to Qin Chuan, "Boss, you must have been joking just now, right?" "I wasn't joking." Qin Chuan looked at Chen Chongqing with a serious expression and said, "Our Black Moon Combat Academy's crucial match, the life and death battle, will depend on you. But I'm not Chen Aochu's opponent." Chen Chongqing was a little anxious. "I've fought him since I was young, and I've never won." Qin Chuan looked deeply at Chen Chongqing and asked, "Are you afraid of him?" "I'm not afraid of him," Chen Chongqing replied. If he was afraid of Chen Aochu, he would not have fought with him since he was young. Although he had never won against Chen Aochu, the more setbacks he faced, the braver he became. He would never admit defeat so easily. However, this was a matter that concerned the final spot. The pressure of having to fight Chen Aochu to determine the final spot was too great. Since you're not afraid of him, then fight seriously. It's not shameful to lose, but it's a huge profit if you win. Qin Chuan chuckled and patted Chen Chongqing's shoulder. There are still others watching you. Don't let her down, okay? Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Chen Chongqing subconsciously turned his gaze towards Li Sairu, who was standing not too far away. At this moment, Li Sairu was also looking at him with an extremely complicated gaze. When she saw Chen Chongqing looking at her, Li Sairu subconsciously shifted her gaze away, as if she was unwilling to meet Chen Chongqing's gaze. Chen Chongqing looked at Li Sairu's face, which had appeared countless times in his life. He could not help but clench his fists. This was the woman he loved the most, the woman he had sworn to marry since he was young. But now, she had been snatched away by someone else. Boss, Chen Chongqing slowly turned his gaze to Qin Chuan. His eyes were resolute. I will do my best. I don't want you to do your best. I just want you to win. Qin Chuan smiled and said to Chen Chongqing, Chen Aochu has snatched away your fiancé. This match will determine whether or not our Black Evil Combat Academy can advance to the semifinals. It will also affect the bet between me and Qin Haoshuan. You must win. Chen Chongqing could not help but grit his teeth. If he lost this match, the Black Moon Combat Academy would not only lose their final spot in the semifinals, but he would also lose Li Sairu. Furthermore, Qin Chuan would also be implicated. He might even be targeted by the Qin family and lose his life. Therefore, he absolutely could not lose. At this moment, Chen Aochu was already impatient to get on the stage. His gaze was fixed on Chen Chongqing from beginning to end. His eyes were filled with a cold intent. He wanted to ruthlessly humiliate Chen Chongqing in front of Li Sairu and make Chen Chongqing lose all face. Chen Chongqing, come. Let me, your big brother, see what your disappointing little brother has learned in the Black Moon Combat Academy over the past year. Chapter 296. This is too shocking. Who would have thought that this semi-final match would involve the internal grudges of the mysterious Sky Sect? From what I know, Chen Aochu and Chen Chongqing are half-brothers. Their relationship has been bad since they were young, and it could even be considered bad. It's said that Chen Chongqing was originally prepared to enter the mysterious Sky Sect's affiliated university, but because his fiancée, Li Sairu, was snatched away by Chen Aochu, he left the mysterious Sky Sect in a fit of anger and went to the Black Moon Combat Academy. If that's the case, then although Chen Aochu and Chen Chongqing are brothers, in reality, they are like fire and water. They can't tolerate each other. That's right. Chen Chongqing has been suppressed by Chen Aochu all these years and has never won. Now, Qin Chuan has placed the Black Moon Combat Academy's last hope on Chen Chongqing. He wants to use this enormous pressure to force out Chen Chongqing's potential and let Chen Chongqing, who has been suppressed for a long time, win fair and square. Although this is easy to say, it's extremely difficult to do. To be honest, I'm not optimistic about Chen Chongqing's chances. Qin Chuan is gambling too much. The commentator's words struck a chord with the audience. Everyone could see that the mysterious Sky Sect's affiliated university was not a match for the Black Moon Combat Academy. Even if Qin Chuan did not make a move, the Black Moon Combat Academy could still easily defeat the mysterious Sky Sect's affiliated university. However, Qin Chuan had repeatedly changed people, causing the Black Moon Combat Academy to be left with only Chen Chongqing. This also meant that Chen Chongqing could not lose. If he lost, the Black Moon Combat Academy would lose the last spot in the semifinals. Chen Chongqing might not be able to withstand this pressure. Of course, there were also people who had other opinions. Some felt that Qin Chuan knew that he would not be able to enter the finals and defeat Qin Haoshuan, so he purposely found a way out. Not only could he avoid the pressure of facing Qin Haoshuan, but he could also gain the reputation of being willing to sacrifice himself for his friend. This was killing two birds with one stone. Almost all of these people were Qin Haoshuan's fans. They instinctively suspected Qin Chuan, doubted Qin Chuan, and felt that Qin Chuan was up to no good. Just as the audience was discussing Qin Chuan's decision, Chen Chongqing had no choice but to bite the bullet and walk into the ring. Chen Aochu's face lit up with excitement when he saw Chen Chongqing walk into the ring. Qin Chuan didn't break his promise. He was definitely going to win this match. Chen Chongqing, you really made a good friend. Chen Aochu looked at Chen Chongqing playfully and said, but your friend might not be very smart. He actually placed his hopes on you in such a crucial battle. Don't you think he is stupid? You're not allowed to insult boss. Chen Chongqing stared sharply at Chen Aochu and said coldly, aren't you afraid of embarrassing the Black Heaven sect? Why should I be afraid of embarrassing myself? The loser is the one who will lose face. Chen Aochu sneered. To be honest, I really don't have much of a chance of winning against Qin Chuan and by you. But against you, I can win even with my eyes closed because I know you too well. You are a complete piece of trash. At this moment, Chen Aochu had completely abandoned his image as a noble young master in front of Chen Chongqing. His entire being was filled with hostility. His eyes were malicious, and his expression was cold and ruthless. He had lost so miserably in the previous matches. He had been sullen to death. Now that he finally had the chance to vent his anger, he had no reason to continue holding it in. Anyway, the whole world knew that he and Chen Chongqing were not on good terms. Since that was the case, he could not be bothered to pretend to be brothers in front of outsiders. The audience was not surprised to see Chen Aochu speak so harshly to Chen Chongqing. After all, no matter who it was difficult to maintain a gentleman's demeanor when facing someone they had always hated. Chen Chongqing was furious. He did not expect Chen Aochu to be so shameless and say such disgusting words. I won't let you have your way, Chen Chongqing angrily said. This time, I will definitely win against you. Originally, Chen Chongqing really did not want to fight with Chen Aochu too much. However, Chen Aochu's current attitude was too much for him to bear. He did not want to disappoint Qin Chuan, and he also did not want Qin Chuan to bear too much infamy for him. Seeing Chen Chongqing's anger, Chen Aochu laughed even more savagely and proudly. He suddenly used a sound transmission technique to whisper to Chen Chongqing, after I win against you, to celebrate, I will forcefully take Li Sairu when I return. When the time comes, I will record it for you. Remember to check your email. Bastard! Chen Chongqing's eyes suddenly turned red. He wanted to kill Chen Aochu and tear apart that disgusting face. 6 Great Academies Ranking Tournament Revival Round. The final match is between Black Moon Combat Academy's Chen Chongqing and Black Heaven Sect's affiliated Chen Aochu. The match will now begin. Toot toot toot. When the whistle sounded, Chen Chongqing did not inscribe a glyph array. Instead, he rushed straight at Chen Aochu, wanting to fight him in close combat. The audience could not help but sigh when they saw this scene. When Chen Aochu had said those words, they had wondered if Chen Chongqing had lost his mind due to anger. Now, it seemed that they were right. Chen Chongqing had completely lost his mind due to anger. He had actually given up on glyph arrays, which he was most proficient in, and wanted to fight Chen Aochu in close combat. How could he possibly win if he used his weakness to attack Chen Aochu's strength? Seeing Chen Chongqing rush at him, Chen Aochu's face could not help but reveal a mocking expression. He took a step forward and the spiritual energy in his body surged, turning into a dazzling golden glyph that adhered to his chest. It actually turned his body into a faint golden color. Golden armor glyph. Chen Aochu angrily roared and raised his hand to punch Chen Chongqing. Chen Chongqing was completely unable to resist, and his body flew out like a kite with a broken string before landing heavily on the ground. Cough cough. Chen Chongqing got up from the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face had already turned pale, and it was obvious that he had suffered serious injuries. However, at this moment, His mind had already calmed down. He knew that he had made a wrong decision and should not have taken the initiative to charge at Chen Aochu. However, it seemed that it was a little too late to realize this because Chen Aochu had already gained the upper hand and was in front of him. You seem to be very upset. Are you regretting it? Chen Aochu stood in front of Chen Chongqing with a cold expression. If it weren't for the fact that this is a competition, I would really want to kill you. However, if I let you live and let you witness me and Li Sairu doing those things in bed, you will definitely feel worse than killing you, right? Bastard, you bang! Chen Aochu viciously kicked Chen Chongqing in the stomach and sent him flying. Compared to winning the competition immediately, he would rather torture Chen Chongqing for a while more. Chapter 297. Plop. Chen Chongqing spat out a mouthful of blood and fell heavily to the ground. He felt as if his bones were about to fall apart, and there was not a single part of his body that was not in pain. His expression was extremely twisted, but he still clenched his teeth and endured the pain. Below the stage, Qin Chuan watched as Chen Chongqing was beaten up by Chen Aochu. His expression was still calm, but the others were somewhat anxious. Chen Chongqing's performance was too unsightly. If the Black Moon Combat Academy lost because of this, they would definitely become the Black Moon Combat Academy's sinners. Qin Chuan, Chen Chongqing won't be able to win like this. Long Xiao looked at Chen Chongqing, who was lying on the ground, and frowned. She said to Qin Chuan, "Are we really going to lose like this?" Long Xiao was very unwilling. They could have gone further, but she could not accept this result. Qin Chuan pursed his lips and said to Long Xiao, "Things haven't developed to the worst point yet, so there's still hope. There's still a chance. Chongqing has fallen, but he might still have a chance to stand up again. We should give him a little more confidence and time." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Long Xiao was somewhat helpless. She did not know what to say. Chen Chongqing was already inferior to Chen Aochu, and now that he was at an absolute disadvantage, it was almost impossible for Chen Chongqing to make a comeback like Lu Zi. Even Long Xiao, who was Chen Chongqing's companion, was not optimistic about his chances, let alone the others. When the commentators saw Chen Chongqing take the initiative to charge at Chen Aochu, they had already concluded that Chen Chongqing was not Chen Aochu's opponent. His defeat was already set in stone. Chen Chongqing is still too immature. He was infuriated by Chen Aochu's words and lost his mind. He used the most unreasonable method to attack Chen Aochu. This made his situation worse since he was already weaker than Chen Aochu. It is only natural that he would be beaten up by Chen Aochu. I think the reason why Chen Chongqing is so angry is not only because of Chen Aochu's provocation, but also because of the anger and resentment he has accumulated against Chen Aochu over the past 10 years. 3 feet of ice was not built in a day. The enmity between Chen Chongqing and Chen Aochu is much more than 3 feet of ice. Sigh, it's just a pity for Qin Chuan and the Black Moon Combat Academy. In order to help Chen Chongqing walk out of the shadow of the past, they handed this heavy responsibility to him. It's a pity that compared to Chen Aochu, Chen Chongqing's performance was too weak and incompetent. Not only did this pressure not turn into motivation, it even crushed Chen Chongqing. If the Black Moon Combat Academy loses this crucial match, I can't imagine what kind of situation Qin Chuan will face in the future. Hearing the commentators' words, the expressions on the audience's faces became somewhat subtle. They looked at Chen Chongqing, who had been completely crushed by Chen Aochu, and they couldn't help but look at Qin Chuan, who was standing below the stage. Their gazes were filled with pity, helplessness, ridicule, and pride. Some people did not understand the situation between Chen Chongqing and Chen Aochu, but they had a rough idea of what had happened after watching the match. They believed that Qin Chuan wanted to help Chen Chongqing walk out of the shadow of the past. His intentions were good, But Qin Chuan had overestimated Chen Chongqing and underestimated Chen Aochu. It was quite difficult to put mud on a wall. As for those who were gloating, they were eager to see Qin Chuan lose the match. No matter how Qin Chuan lost, they would still be happy. On the other side, Li Sairu was also paying attention to every movement on the stage. Her expression had changed from the initial expectation and worry to numbness and disappointment. Chen Chongqing was still the same Chen Chongqing that she remembered, and he had not changed at all. How can I trust you when you're like this? You once betrayed my trust in you, and now you want to betray Qin Chuan's trust in you? From now on, who else in this world can trust you? Bang! Chen Aochu grabbed Chen Chongqing's hair and viciously smashed Chen Chongqing's head onto the ground. Fresh blood flowed out, dyeing the ground and Chen Aochu's hands red. Look, is this the Black Moon Combat Academy's Chen Chongqing? So many people have placed their hopes on you, but is this all you've got? Chen Aochu looked at Chen Chongqing with disdain and sneered. Let me interview you. How do you feel right now? Despair or anger? Maybe neither. Maybe it's shame? No, you won't feel shame because you've lost to me too many times. You're already used to it and you don't have a shameful heart. Chen Chongqing's eyes were red as he glared at Chen Aochu. He panted violently and squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth. Bastard! Chen Aochu dug his ears and sneered. Since you were young, other than calling me a bastard, what else can you call me? You don't even know how to curse, so how can you fight me? As he spoke, Chen Aochu made another move and viciously slapped Chen Chongqing's face. This slap was not very strong, but it succeeded in causing Chen Chongqing's cheek to swell. Seeing Chen Chongqing's miserable appearance, Chen Aochu grinned and said, You have to grit your teeth and hold on. Don't ever surrender, or else I won't have much fun. Chen Chongqing clenched his teeth and glared at Chen Aochu angrily. He tried to struggle, but Chen Aochu had already sealed the spiritual power in his body. Now, he was no different from an ordinary person. In front of Chen Aochu, there was nothing he could do except take a beating and be humiliated. Looking at the disgusting sneer on Chen Aochu's face, the strongest emotion in Chen Chongqing's heart was not anger, but shame. He felt that he had let down Qin Chuan's trust, let down his companion's expectations, and let down Li Sairu's little remaining expectations of him. Below the ring, so many people were looking at him, hoping that he could walk out of the shadow of the past and stand under the sun again. However, he was unable to grasp this opportunity and disappointed those who truly cared about him. I'm really sorry. In the end, Chen Chongqing couldn't hold it in. Tears of regret flowed down from the corners of his eyes. He really regretted it, really regretted it. If God could give him another chance to start over, he would definitely not act so cowardly again. He would definitely work hard. Hey, why are you crying? Chen Aochu couldn't help but laugh when he saw Chen Chongqing's tears. Did you get some news? Are you mourning for your grandfather in advance? That old man has protected you for so many years, it's about time for him to rest. Hearing Chen Aochu's words, Chen Chongqing suddenly raised his head and shouted, What did you just say? Chapter 298. What? Do you think no one knows that the old fart went down the mountain to see you yesterday? Chen Aochu sneered and looked at Chen Chongqing with disdain. If the old fart had stayed on the mountain obediently, perhaps both of you could have survived. However, the old fart insisted on going down the mountain to see you. Tell me, isn't he courting death? What do you want to do to my grandfather? Chen Chongqing stared at Chen Aochu and wanted to eat his flesh. What do you think I want to do? Chen Aochu looked at Chen Chongqing with a playful gaze and said, The real pillars of the Black Sky sect are the nascent soul cultivators. That old fart is only in the Golden Core realm. If I kill him, I will die in vain. You can't kill me, the young sect master, for that old fart, right? Hearing Chen Aochu's words, Chen Chongqing finally exploded. He raised his hand and punched out, ruthlessly smashing towards Chen Aochu's face. However, Chen Aochu easily grabbed his wrist and blocked it. "TSK, TSK, TSK, so you only have this much strength when you're angry. I really overestimated you." Chen Aochu seemed to be a little dispirited. After all, it was not fun to torture someone who was not as good as himself, especially when this person had lost to him countless times. "I won't kill you today because I want to see you go up the mountain to collect that old fart's corpse with my own eyes." Haha! Bang! A blood-stained fist landed on Chen Aochu's cheek, interrupting the arrogant laughter. This time, the one who attacked was not Chen Aochu, but Chen Chongqing. The one who got hit was not Chen Chongqing, but Chen Aochu. Under the impact of the violent spiritual power, Chen Aochu's cheek swelled rapidly. His body flew backward involuntarily and fell heavily on the ground, splashing a cloud of dust. The burning pain on his face made Chen Aochu's mind go blank for a moment. He was confused and puzzled. He had already sealed the spiritual power in Chen Chongqing's body. How could Chen Chongqing still use spiritual power to attack him? He had no strength to resist and could only lie on the ground crying like a useless person. How could he still have so much strength? Ha! Chen Chongqing gasped for breath and slowly crawled up from the ground. From the beginning to the end, his gaze was firmly locked onto Chen Aochu's body. His murderous intent surged, as if it had materialized. "You dare to hit me? How dare you hit me?" Finally, Chen Aochu regained his senses. He stood up from the ground and stared at Chen Chongqing in disbelief. He could not believe what had just happened. He had been knocked down by Chen Chongqing in front of so many people. Intense shame and anger filled Chen Aochu's heart. He roared and took a step forward. The spiritual energy in his body surged and condensed into a ball in his hand. Then, he threw it at Chen Chongqing. "I will kill you!" Bang! It was the same punch, the same position. Chen Aochu was once again knocked down by Chen Chongqing and fell to the ground. If the first time was because Chen Aochu was not paying attention and Chen Chongqing took advantage of the opportunity, then how could the second time be explained? The commentators didn't know what to say. The audience was also stunned by the scene in front of them. Chen Chongqing, who didn't have the strength to fight back before, was knocking down Chen Aochu again and again. What was going on? How? Chen Aochu was completely stunned. He was knocked down by Chen Chongqing again. Chen Chongqing looked at the shocked Chen Aochu and slowly walked towards him. When Chen Aochu saw this, he couldn't help but reveal a look of fear. However, this fear quickly turned into anger, incomparable anger. "You piece of trash! I will kill you!" Chen Aochu roared and charged at Chen Chongqing again. This time, he completely exploded with all his strength. He wanted to release his full form and crush Chen Chongqing. However, before he could fully release the hidden power in his body, Chen Chongqing's figure had already appeared in front of him like a ghost. Chen Chongqing viciously punched him in the face again. Bang! Chen Aochu fell again. He was defeated by Chen Chongqing's punch 3 times in a row. Looking at the soulless Chen Aochu lying on the ground, Chen Chongqing panted and said in a low voice, "Do you know that I've been practicing this punch since I was 3 years old? Every day, I have to throw thousands of punches at the wooden stakes. Tens of thousands of punches. I would imagine the wooden stake as your face and beat you up violently. However, I have never used this punch on you because Grandpa did not allow me to do so. I didn't understand in the past. I only thought that because you were the older brother and I was the younger brother, I should respect you and give in to you. Even if you bullied me, I should silently endure it. I have been like this for more than 10 years. I am used to it and numb to it. But why do you want to steal my favorite girl? Ever since I was young, the best things have always been yours. Even my fiancée should be yours, right? Do you know? Why did my grandpa look for me yesterday? He told me not to go on the stage and not to fight with people from Black Heaven sex-affiliated universities. If I have to go on the stage, I must lose. If I don't lose, I will be killed. I don't want to die, and I don't want my grandpa to die either. Therefore, I decided to betray my boss's trust in me and my friends' expectations of me. I will let you beat me up and not fight back. I thought that by doing this, you would let me go like you did in the past and proudly announce your victory. However, why did you want to kill my grandpa? You've already gotten the best of everything in the world. Everything I have is yours. Why won't you even let go of my last family member? Amidst his furious roar, Chen Chongqing ruthlessly punched Chen Aochu in the face. That crazy strength almost shattered Chen Aochu's head. His handsome face was now bruised and swollen, and he no longer looked human. This punch is for the past me. Bang! This punch is for the present me. Bang! I'm punching him on behalf of my grandfather. Punch after punch, Chen Chongqing's fists landed heavily on Chen Aochu's body, breaking Chen Aochu's bones and turning him into a bloody mess. The entire stadium was silent. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of Seashell. Chen Aochu's arrogance, Chen Chongqing's humiliation, Chen Aochu's shock, and Chen Chongqing's desperate cry. All of this deeply stimulated everyone's nerves. The young man who had been weak and bullied for more than 10 years finally stood up. Chapter 299. On the stage, the referee stopped the crazed Chen Chongqing. If the referee did not act, then Chen Chongqing might turn Chen Aochu into a pile of minced meat. Looking at Chen Aochu, who was completely unconscious and covered in blood, the referee's cheeks twitched as he announced, Black Moon Combat Academy vs. Black Sky Sex-Affiliated University. In the last match of the revival round, Chen Aochu is unconscious. The winner is Chen Chongqing. The winner was Chen Chongqing. When he heard the referee's announcement, Chen Chongqing started to cry and wail. He sat on the ground and covered his face with his hands as he wantonly cried. He was venting the grievances and pain that had accumulated in his heart for the past 10 years. At this moment, the crowd, which was supposed to be cheering for the winner, was extremely quiet. Everyone looked at Chen Chongqing, who was sitting on the stage and crying. Some of the more emotional people also started to cry. They pitied Chen Chongqing, sympathizing with this youth who had been bullied for 10 years. Today, he had finally stood up. Qin Chuan slowly walked onto the stage and squatted down in front of Chen Chongqing. He smiled and asked, "Why are you crying? Shouldn't you be happy that you won the match?" When he heard Qin Chuan's words, Chen Chongqing slowly raised his head. His nose twitched as he choked with sobs and said to Qin Chuan, "Boss, it's been 10 years. I've been bullied by Chen Aochu for 10 years. This is the first time I've won against him fair and square." As he spoke, Chen Chongqing started to cry again. He really couldn't control his emotions and wanted to cry to his heart's content. Long Xiao and Bai Yu walked onto the stage and stood beside Chen Chongqing. They looked at Chen Chongqing, who was once again bawling. Their emotions were somewhat complicated. Long Xiao, who was born in a noble family, never knew that the disciples of the world would have such hardships and hardships. "All right, don't cry. We won, not lost." After receiving treatment, Lu Zi, who had recovered, also appeared on the stage. She looked at Chen Chongqing, who was crying like a child, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Those who didn't know what was going on would think that the Black Moon Combat Academy had lost. "Boss, I'm sorry." Chen Chongqing suddenly looked at Qin Chuan and said with shame, "I originally wanted to lose to Chen Aochu on purpose. If it wasn't for him," before Chen Chongqing could finish, he was interrupted by Qin Chuan. He chuckled and said, "All right, I don't blame you. The process isn't important, the result is the most important." Qin Chuan is right. Chen Aochu has bullied you for more than 10 years. Now that you have defeated him in front of everyone, this is a perfect result for you. Long Xiao lamented to Chen Chongqing, I'm afraid that punch of yours will leave a shadow in Chen Aochu's heart for the rest of his life. Chen Chongqing, don't cry. Lu Zi patted Chen Chongqing's shoulder and said to him, I think that you need to give that girl an explanation. I heard everything just now. You said that she's your most beloved girl, and she's waiting for you below the stage. After hearing Lu Zi's words, everyone subconsciously looked at Li Sairu, who was standing below the stage. Li Sairu was at a loss when faced with everyone's gazes, so she subconsciously turned around and left. When he saw that Li Sairu had left, Qin Chuan hurriedly pulled Chen Chongqing up from the ground and pushed him, saying, What are you waiting for? Hurry up and chase after her. Chen Chongqing looked at Li Sairu's gradually disappearing figure and gritted his teeth before suddenly chasing after her. Seeing Chen Chongqing chasing after Li Sairu, Lu Zi faintly sighed and said, What an enviable relationship. When Qin Chuan heard this, he turned to look at Lu Zi and said in a low voice, I'm sorry. Lu Zi was stunned for a moment and asked Qin Chuan in confusion, Why are you suddenly apologizing to me? If it weren't for my request, you wouldn't have been in danger before, so I should apologize to you. Qin Chuan looked seriously at Lu Zi and said, Next time, I definitely won't let you encounter that kind of danger again. When she heard Qin Chuan's words, Lu Zi burst out laughing and asked, Then how are you going to compensate me? Well, I'll just say a few more words of apology. I'm sorry. Hey, you're too perfunctory. Bang! The elegant and graceful young woman fiercely threw the exquisite celadone tea set on the floor, smashing it to pieces and making a frightening sound. Bastard! He's simply a bastard! The young woman was flustered and exasperated as she cursed angrily. How dare that son of a bitch hit Aochu? How dare he beat Aochu up like that? He's courting death. I must kill him. Madam, please calm down. The white-haired old woman standing beside the young woman coughed softly and said to the young woman, Madam, young master threatened to kill a nan on the stage and has already violated the taboo. We were wrong first. I don't care. The young woman shouted angrily, He hit my son, so I want him dead. Who do you want dead? At this moment, a tall and thin figure slowly walked into the room and walked in front of the young woman with a gloomy face. Chen Xiantian, your son was beaten. Are you not going to do anything about it? When the young woman saw the man who came in, she immediately said angrily, Aren't you afraid of losing your reputation as the leader of the Black Sky sect? What's there to lose about the Black Sky sect's reputation? Chen Xiantian snorted coldly. Hong Ying, if you hadn't spoiled and indulged Aochu, how could he have said such disgraceful words on the stage today? My face and the Black Sky sect's face have long been lost by that unfilial son. Chen Xiantian. Hong Ying was furious. Your son was beaten up. It's fine if you don't stand up for him, but you're actually criticizing me? Aochu has bullied Chongqing since he was young. It's been more than 10 years. Why haven't you asked about it? Chen Xiantian looked coldly at Hong Ying. Chongqing has only beaten Aochu up once, and you're already unwilling? That son of a bitch should have died long ago. Hong Ying spoke without thinking and said angrily, If it wasn't for slap. Chen Xiantian couldn't bear it and slapped Hong Ying hard, interrupting her words. Hong Ying looked at Chen Xiantian in shock. After being husband and wife for so many years, this was the first time Chen Xiantian had hit her. Hong Ying, I'm warning you. Chen Chongqing is also my son. If you don't like him, you can refuse to see him, ignore him. But if I hear you insult him one more time, I'll strip Aochu of his position as the young sect leader. If you don't accept it, go find your father and ask him to remove me from my position as the sect leader and expel me from the sect. After saying this, Chen Xiantian flicked his sleeves and left, not giving Hong Ying a chance to make a scene. Wet nurse, he hit me. He actually hit me. Hong Ying covered her face and cried. She couldn't accept this fact. The old woman stood behind Hong Ying and sighed helplessly when she saw Hong Ying crying. Probably no nascent soul cultivator would be so vexed over the matters between his wife and son. Chen Xiantian had really suffered all these years. Chapter 300. Before the match between the Black Moon Combat Academy and the affiliated University of the Black Heaven sect, no one would have thought that the person who would leave the deepest impression in this match was not Qin Chuan or Bai Yu, but Chen Chongqing, the second son of the Black Heaven sect's master and the younger brother that Chen Aochu had bullied since childhood. As the young master of the Black Heaven sect, Chen Aochu had always been regarded as an existence on par with Qin Haoshuan and Yi Qingning. Today, he had made a fool of himself in the arena. Not only had he spoken vulgarly, but he had also been beaten by Chen Chongqing to the point that he could not even fight back. It could be said that he had lost all face for the Black Heaven sect. On the other hand, Chen Chongqing, who had endured for more than 10 years, suddenly exploded and became the model of a true man. As a man, he should endure what ordinary people could not endure and do what ordinary people could not do. For the sake of his family's safety, he should endure humiliation and fight back for the sake of his family's safety. Only then would he not have lived his life in vain. Of course, in addition to reporting on Chen Chongqing, the media also reported on Qin Chuan. After all, Chen Chongqing's rise today was due to Qin Chuan, his good friend and brother. If not for Qin Chuan's firm support, Chen Chongqing might not have had the opportunity to fight back. When the media wanted to interview Qin Chuan and Chen Chongqing, Qin Chuan had already slipped away, leaving Chen Chongqing alone with the reporters. Facing the reporters' encirclement, Chen Chongqing was miserable. He could only answer a few questions to satisfy the reporters' curiosity and quickly find an opportunity to leave. When he got rid of the reporters, Li Sairu's figure had already disappeared from Chen Chongqing's sight. Chen Chongqing looked left and right, but he could not find Li Sairu anywhere. He could not help but feel a little dejected, completely losing his previous anticipation and apprehension. "Are you looking for me?" Just as Chen Chongqing was feeling sad, an extremely familiar voice suddenly rang out behind him. Chen Chongqing quickly turned around and looked at Li Sairu with a pleasantly surprised expression. He cheered, "Sairu." Seeing Chen Chongqing's excited expression, Li Sairu's eyes could not help but reveal a complicated expression. She whispered, "Congratulations, you've successfully defeated your inner demon, Sairu." Chen Chongqing looked at Li Sairu with deep affection, as if he had 1,000 words to say to her. "Chongqing, we..." Li Sairu pursed her lips and said softly, "We can't go back." Hearing Li Sairu's words, the thousands of words that Chen Chongqing had yet to say were all stuck in his throat. He couldn't say anything. Were they really unable to go back? Could it be? Thinking of a certain possibility, Chen Chongqing's face could not help but reveal a pained expression. He hated his own incompetence, hated himself for not being able to stand up sooner. There's still a long way to go. You'll definitely meet a girl who truly loves you and treats you wholeheartedly. Li Sairu held back her tears and said to Chen Chongqing in a hoarse voice, "Let's forget about me." After saying this, Li Sairu turned around and left. She was afraid that if she didn't leave, she would not be able to hold back her tears. Chen Chongqing stood there in a daze, watching Li Sairu's figure gradually disappear into the distance. His heart felt empty, as if he had lost the most important thing in his life. When Chen Chongqing, who was in a daze, returned to the office, the living room was quiet. Only Qin Chuan was sitting on the sofa and drinking water leisurely. Seeing Chen Chongqing come back, Qin Chuan smiled and said to Chen Chongqing, "Chongqing, come and sit down." Chen Chongqing, who was depressed in his heart, heard Qin Chuan's words. He slowly walked to Qin Chuan's side and sat down. He picked up the cup beside him and drank a lot of water. Then he said to Qin Chuan, "Boss, have you ever loved a girl deeply in your life?" "No." Qin Chuan shook his head and said, "To be honest, I've never liked a girl since I was a child. At that time, I was busy with my life every day. How could I have time to talk about love?" Hearing Qin Chuan's answer, Chen Chongqing couldn't help but ask, "What about Wang Wenxue? You were childhood sweethearts. Boss, have you never fallen in love with her?" "To tell you the truth, I did fall in love with her, but it was just a feeling. I didn't really like her." At the mention of Wang Wenxue, Qin Chuan's eyes couldn't help but reveal a complicated expression. He softly said to Chen Chongqing, "Back then, Wang Wenxue and I grew up together. We were childhood sweethearts. At that time, I thought that I would spend the rest of my life with Wang Wenxue like this. But later on, Wang Wenxue was tested to have an extremely high cultivation talent, while I was a good-for-nothing. From that day on, the relationship between Wang Wenxue and I changed. It became pure and simple. It was not until that incident that we broke off contact." Qin Chuan had also thought that if Wang Wenxue hadn't been a genius, and he hadn't been a loser, maybe he would have really gotten together with Wang Wenxue. However, there were no ifs in this world. Hearing this, Chen Chongqing looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle expression and asked, "Boss, if God gave you a chance to start over with Wang Wenxue, would you be willing?" "There are no ifs in this world. Even if there were, I wouldn't be willing to change the current situation. It's good to let nature take its course." Qin Chuan patted Chen Chongqing's shoulder lightly and said, "You're only 19 years old. You're still very young. It's a good thing to experience a painstaking relationship, but it's not right to be unable to recover from it. Trust me, you'll definitely meet a girl better than Li Sairu in the future." "Thank you, boss." Chen Chongqing sighed and said, "I'm just a little worried. With Chen Aochu's temper, he might vent his anger on Sairu because of what happened today. If Chen Aochu really did that, it would only make people look down on him even more." Qin Chuan smiled and said, "Even if Chen Aochu wants to do that, those who want to keep his position as the young lord will definitely do their best to stop him." Chen Chongqing thought carefully and felt that Qin Chuan's words made some sense. Therefore, he temporarily put down the worry in his heart and said to Qin Chuan, "Boss, I really have to thank you properly today. I also hope that you can punish me severely." Although Qin Chuan had already said that he wouldn't be calculative, Chen Chongqing still felt apologetic in his heart. It was very difficult for him to pretend that nothing had happened. Qin Chuan looked deeply at Chen Chongqing and said, "Since you insist, then I won't be polite. Let's go, follow me to the cultivation room. I'm lacking a human sandbag. You can be it." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Chen Chongqing's face couldn't help but change slightly and asked, "Boss, can we change the punishment method?" "That's not impossible." Qin Chuan looked at Chen Chongqing with a smile and said, "Senior Lan's mood isn't too good. Why don't you accompany her for a chat?" Chen Chongqing. Chapter 301. Shuxin, this is the chocolate cake I personally made. Do you want to try it? Chen Chongqing was all smiles as he handed a piece of cake to Lan Shuxin, appearing to be extremely enthusiastic. "Thank you for your kind intentions, student Chen. I've been on a diet recently, so I won't be eating." Lan Shuxin calmly rejected the cake Chen Chongqing handed her. From the beginning to the end, she didn't even glance at him. Faced with Lan Shuxin's deliberate rejection and aloofness, Chen Chongqing couldn't help but reveal an awkward expression. He looked at Blue Pool, who was sitting at the side, with a pleading gaze. However, Blue Pool didn't sense anything amiss and didn't give any response. "Senior Lan, do you want to eat the strawberry cake?" Qin Chuan suddenly walked over, holding a piece of strawberry cake in his hand. Lan Shuxin glanced at the strawberry cake in Qin Chuan's hand, smiled and said, "Thank you. After saying that, Lan Shuxin reached out to receive the strawberry cake from Qin Chuan and started eating it in small bites. Seeing this scene, Chen Chongqing couldn't help but throw a resentful glance at Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan acted as if he didn't see Chen Chongqing's gaze and said to Lan Shuxin with a grin, "Senior, are you free tonight? I have a small problem with my cultivation and would like to consult you." "Sure, wait a minute." Chen Chongqing finally couldn't take it anymore. He jumped up and hooked his arm around Qin Chuan's neck, dragging him into the distance. Only when he was far enough away from Lan Shuxin did he let go of Qin Chuan. "Boss, you're too much." Chen Chongqing looked at Qin Chuan gloomily and said, "It wasn't easy for me to find a chance to get closer to Shuxin. How can you come and spoil it?" "You're an idiot." Qin Chuan rolled his eyes and said, "This isn't called spoiling. This is called a wingman. Do you know what a wingman is?" Chen Chongqing looked at Qin Chuan in astonishment and said in disbelief, "Someone like you who's never been in a relationship knows what a wingman is. Even if you haven't eaten pork, haven't you seen pigs run?" Qin Chuan rolled his eyes at Chen Chongqing and said, "Let me ask you, from Senior Sisterland's performance just now, did you see anything?" "What?" Chen Chongqing looked at Qin Chuan in confusion. "Idiot! Can't you see that Senior Sister Lan deliberately ate the cake I gave her in front of you? She's just trying to piss you off." Qin Chuan rolled his eyes at Chen Chongqing and said, "Tonight, I will invite Senior Sister Lan to the cultivation room. When the time comes, I won't go, but you will. You will pester Senior Sister Lan to help you cultivate. If she doesn't agree, you will say that you will be the first to fight in the semifinals and that you want to get a good start for the school. Senior Sister Lan will definitely help you for the school's honor." "Boss, am I going to be in the starting lineup for the semifinals?" Chen Chongqing's eyes widened. Qin Chuan was a little speechless. "This is just an excuse, understand? When the time comes, we'll just find an excuse to dodge it. The key now is to break the ice, understand?" "Boss is indeed boss." Chen Chongqing gave Qin Chuan a thumbs up and said, "Little brother, my future happiness will depend on you, boss." "Wait a moment." Qin Chuan looked at Chen Chongqing and asked seriously, "Tell me first, what are your thoughts in the future? If you and Senior Sister Lan are together, will you still think about Li Sire?" Chen Chongqing couldn't help but fall silent after hearing Qin Chuan's words. After a while, he opened his mouth and said to Qin Chuan, "Boss, why can't I have both soothing and Sairu at the same time?" Qin Chuan was speechless. The revival round of the 6 Great Academies ranking tournament had ended. The Black Moon Combat Academy had won consecutive battles and had successfully advanced to the semifinals. This made the semifinals of the official tournament very interesting. First of all, because the Black Moon Combat Academy and Star Dragon's No. 1 Academy had fought before, it was impossible for the Black Moon Combat Academy and Star Dragon's No. 1 Academy to meet in the semifinals. In other words, if Qin Chuan and Qin Haoshuan wanted to settle their grudges in the arena, then they would have to advance to the finals. But before that, the Black Moon Combat Academy would have to face no weaklings. Starry Sky Academy, the weakest academy and the last place in the previous ranking competitions of the 6 Great Academies. This year, because of Zhou Lin's sudden appearance, Starry Sky Academy had a strong rise and was also a dark horse. Many people wanted to witness the collision between Qin Chuan and Zhou Lin, to see who exactly was the king of the dark horse. The other was the Divine Sword Academy. The Divine Sword Academy focused on body refinement and sword cultivation. Almost every student was a sword cultivator, and a sword cultivator's strongest point was their offense. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that no one would be a match for a sword cultivator in an open battle. Among the younger generation, Su Kuang, who was known as the Little Sword Deity, was definitely the No. 1 sword cultivator. No matter who the Black Moon Combat Academy met, it would be a tough battle. However, the Cosmic Star Academy was slightly weaker in comparison. After all, only Zhou Lin was strong, and the rest were average. On the other hand, the Divine Sword Academy's students were all extremely strong, especially Su Kuang. Even Qin Haoshuan might not dare to face Su Kuang head-on. If Qin Chuan met Su Kuang, he might not win. Only the Black Moon Combat Academy, the Cosmic Star Academy, and the Divine Sword Academy had participated in the drawing ceremony for the semifinals. Under everyone's attention, the Cosmic Star Academy's representative, Zhou Lin, had drawn a blank lot. This meant that the Black Moon Combat Academy would face the Divine Sword Academy in the semifinals. When the results of the drawing were announced, everyone couldn't help but sigh. The Black Moon Combat Academy had once again drawn the worst lot. From the revival round until now, it had been a hellish level of difficulty. After the results of the drawing were announced, Qin Chuan was invited out by Zhou Lin. Walking on the wide streets of Star Dragon City, Qin Chuan looked at the various kinds of people around him and the flying shuttles in the sky. He couldn't help but think of the first time he had gone to the Cloud Dragon mountain range with Zhou Lin. He smiled and said to Zhou Lin, "Senior sister, I suddenly thought of your Skywalker number 9. That's a ride that I've always dreamed of having. It's really too cool." Zhou Lin smiled faintly and said, "If you can defeat Qin Haoshuan in the finals, then I'll give you my Skywalker number 9. Qin Chuan looked at Zhou Lin with some surprise. It wasn't because Zhou Lin was generous enough to give him an expensive limited edition flying shuttle, but because Zhou Lin said that he would meet Qin Haoshuan in the finals. "Senior sister, don't you have the confidence to defeat Qin Haoshuan?" Qin Chuan looked at Zhou Lin with a subtle expression. Zhou Lin pursed her lips. "To be honest, I don't have much chance of winning. However, I will try my best because I want to meet you in the finals." "Senior sister, you have to believe in yourself." Qin Chuan looked deeply at Zhou Lin and said, "We will definitely meet in the finals." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.